Sword of Coming Chapter 1151. The young Taoist priest is sitting on a small bamboo chair, with a mountain of poverty behind him. This is called having a backer. Xian Wei dipped his saliva in his mouth and turned over a page of the book. Unconsciously, the snow-white paper and the pitch-black words were filled with a faint blush. When the Taoist priest raised his head, he saw that the sun was setting in the west, and there were still red burning clouds in the sky, still reluctant to leave and longing for the world. "There is a book in your sleeve, you are so rich and noble, I have nothing to do today, little fairy. The long river of time is a dojo, and the days and I are like swimming fish, swimming leisurely together." After the mountain patrol, the father-in-law's son who had been busy for a day had already been delivered to the door of his house. Xiaomili came to the foot of the mountain, tugged on the rope of the crossbody package, and asked tentatively, "Master Xian Wei?" The Taoist Xian Wei understood it, nodded and said with a smile, "I'll finish the work immediately. I'll take some when I have some free time." This is a riddle that belongs exclusively to him and Xiaomili. Nagging is also knocking, and eating melon seeds is also knocking. After all, Luola Mountain is not an ordinary mountain. We welcome and send visitors infrequently, and even if we occasionally receive guests, they are not ordinary people. When I'm free, I'm really free. Even if I'm busy, I can't keep him busy. The owner of the mountain generously allocated the fragrant volcano directly to Xian Wei and his new disciples as a dojo to open the mountain. In recent days, Taoist priests Xian Wei and Lin Feijing have been carrying hoes and dustpans on the other side of the mountain. With the hatchet in hand, we were busy, working together to build bridges and roads, gradually building pavilions, and building huts. Simple and simple, there is no need to be so particular about it, but after all, it is the addition of bricks and tiles to one's own family. No matter how you look at it, you will feel happy. Xian Wei did not ask for a tael of silver from Mr. Wei Wenlong, the accountant of Jisa Fenghuan Mansion. With his salary as a janitor, it was more than enough. Besides, how could Chief Zhou not show any signs every time he climbed a mountain? As a man, when your money bag bulges, your waist will become stronger. The poor man is no longer poor now, he knows that he is a rich man. Nuanshu sent a message, saying that it was the wish of the mountain owner that Taoist Master Xian Wei could go to Xiangshan Mountain more in the near future. He was busy with important matters and there was no one to watch over the mountain gate, so it would be okay. Xian Wei was the best at being rude to polite people, and he immediately humbly accepted the mountain master's suggestion. In the Xiangshan Mountain, he and the cheap disciple took a break between work, eating pickles and chewing dry food, with the gurgling sound of the stream in their ears. I drank a pot of glutinous rice wine with my apprentice among the mountain flowers and looked around. I always felt that every day was a good time to have a new look. There is no one on Luola Mountain who dislikes Xiaomili, but if we really want to say who chats with Xiaomili the most, to be honest, if we count the number of words in the chat, it is really the gatekeeper, Taoist priest Xian Wei, who has the most. It is estimated that Nuanshu and Chen Lingjun are not comparable. Xian Wei really likes to chat with Xiaomili. He is very interested every time and is never bored at all. So much so that even Chen Lingjun and Bai Xian were in admiration. It would be a pity that Xian Wei didn't open a school to learn from him. Xiaomili would also save those wonderful ideas that came to her during the mountain patrol, and then go to the mountain gate to share them with Taoist Master Xian Wei. Occasionally, a few will run away, but they will often be picked up next time they patrol the mountains. One of them has nothing to worry about, and the other has nothing to worry about. They talk about everything with their brows stretched out and lazily. The Xian Wei put his hands in his sleeves like a farmer, with his palms stacked in his sleeves. Our sorrows are often brought about by yesterday, and worries are often worried about what will happen tomorrow. Even if there is a recipe for immortality in the world, how can we solve the problem that yesterday has passed? Things that have not yet come tomorrow. Buddhism says that things cannot be eliminated except the mind. As a common man, it is easy to do but difficult to do. How can we truly let things change according to our heart? Xiaomi Li shook his head and said seriously, Master Xianwei, you are an immortal who practices superb Taoism in the mountains. The young Taoist priest leaned comfortably on the back of the bamboo chair and said with a smile, maybe Xiaomi has a clever trick, please give me some advice. Xiaomi Li laughed and said, then just ask the right person. If you ask me how to practice immortal magic, I'm sorry, the big water monster in Dumb Lake can only wander the rivers and lakes, but if you want to ask me how to fight with unhappy, oh, I do have some insights. The little girl in black put her chin on her hands and blinked her eyes. She saw the high mountains, the curved water, the chubby white clouds, the big-bellied blue sky. There is no need to start with the real words in your heart. Yesterday's worries and unhappiness are all the grains of rice are small and big, put them in the big happy bowl today, eat them, fill the gaps between your teeth, and put the bowl on the big table tomorrow. The young Taoist priest gently touched his palms and exclaimed in admiration, that's right, that's right. Don't dedicate your limited body to dedicating millions of sorrows to the world. Xiaomi Li handed over another handful of melon seeds, and Xianwei took it and said with a smile, I also have a bowl, but I didn't bring it with me. I left it at my ancestral home. With a glass of wine in hand, big things are like mustard seeds, while eating melon seeds, small things are like the sky. Xiaomi Li rubbed her cheeks and hesitated to speak. Xianwei smiled heartily and said, Pindao didn't pop out of a stone. Of course he has his hometown and his ancestral home. Xiaomi Li chewed the melon seeds and whispered, Master Xianwei, Sister Pei said that you were not yet prosperous back then. When you were in Longyu Shoal, you were captured by the bandit den as the accountant. Sister Pei also said that you were the big guy. The plump female head of the house is strong and powerful. She covets your beauty and wants to steal you as her husband. Sister Pei also said that it was a shame that you refused to obey and used many tricks to pretend that she was in Beijing to take the exam. You son, after you are named on the gold list, you will definitely come back and it will be known that the matchmaker is marrying her. He brought her home in an 8-carriage sedan chair, so that the female master let you go. When you left, you splashed ink and left a calligraphy treasure for the village. God rewards those who work hard. The bandits cheered loudly, and the master sent you down the mountain, and the pear blossoms brought rain. Is it true? The story is full of twists and turns. Xianwei Nanyan felt dizzy when he heard this. It's an embarrassing thing, an embarrassing thing. Some of it was Xiao Haitan's exaggeration back then, and some of it was real. For example, the head of the family was actually very handsome and as beautiful as a flower. As for the oath of eternal love, of course there is no such thing. There is a small town saying that describes something meaningless, and one would say, there is no bright spot. Plaques will be hung in the main halls of wealthy homes. If a bandit's den where people cut paths down the mountain hangs the slogan, Heaven rewards those who work hard, it will be used to encourage oneself every day. Master Xianwei, don't you consider the feelings of the people nearby and the merchants passing by? Xianwei recalled some past events and said softly, it is said to be a bandit's nest, but in fact it is a people who are driven to the mountains by the world to survive. There are people who block roads to make money, but there are none who kill people. After getting the money, the bandits still pay IOUs. After traveling all over the country for so many years, the only people who robbed the most villages were the old men who resigned and returned to their hometowns with lavish eunuchs. They often hired hundreds of people. Can you imagine those officials? When you leave office and hand over your seal, not to mention the tables and chairs in the government office, even the windows will be removed and moved home. I remember that Jizi has always wanted to save money, and when the debt is paid off, he will build a famous martial arts sect and make a living as an escort. Every time we talk about this while drinking, the eyes of men, women and children all light up. Xiaomili held her cheeks with her hands, listening intently, listening to Taoist Xianwei's eloquent talk about the past. After taking another look at the sky and scenery, Xianwei raised his sleeves, shook them slightly, closed his eyes, and reached out to count. Setting up a stall to tell fortunes, being able to pinch and calculate, and cutting gold with an iron mouth are the skills of traveling Taoist priests all over the world. Xiaomili asked in confusion, "Master Xianwei, what are you doing?" Xianwei slowly opened his eyes and said seriously, "Do the math and see if there is green pepper fried ham on the table today." Xiaomili rolled his eyes. Xianwei patted his belly and said with a laugh, "Food is the most important thing for the people, so you can't fool yourself." Xiaomili suddenly said, "Check again to see if there are any braised bamboo shoots." The Xianwei asked, "If the right protector opens his mouth to order, the old cook won't show off his 120% skill." Xiaomili explained, "Zhongqi has no discernment. He eats 3 meals a day, plus a midnight snack, and orders dishes every time. It off the old chef, so I won't add fuel to the fire." Besides, in private, the old chef would send her and sister Wanchu all kinds of pastries every now and then, so many that he could hardly even remember their names. Xianwei nodded vigorously, but he was actually very grateful to Zhong Qian, the toothpick-wielding man. Without him to face the difficulties, Xianwei and Jing Dafeng would not be able to get back to work. On the mountain road, a young man with an astonishing face walked slowly. Xianwei was already accustomed to this, but he couldn't lose his etiquette and stood up together with Xiaomili. When he arrived at the gate of the mountain, the young man pointed to the top of the mountain very close to Luola Mountain, signed up for his number, and said with a smile, "Distant relatives are not as good as close neighbors. I come from Tiandu Peak. My surname is Lu Mingshan, and my Taoist name is Tianbian." The Xianwei said, "It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm a poor and mysterious person. I'm a down-and-out mountain gatekeeper. I've met fellow Daoist Lu. Tianbian, right?" The boy's Taoist slogan is not bad either, Xuanchu. Let's see who has the more powerful Taoist slogan. But Xiaomili was curious as to why the music composer, who was always diligent, didn't show up. Lu Shen calmly turned slightly sideways, his face as usual. Xuanchu Immortal and Luola Mountain really complement each other. If the mountain is not high, the immortal will be spiritual, and if the mountain is not high, the Tao will be revealed. Xianwei couldn't speak for a while. Such kind words were a bit too much. According to Jing Dafeng, it's the heat, so pay attention to the heat. Lu Shen said straight to the point, "I visited Luopa Mountain today to tell you something. I hope the Taoist master can tell it to Master Chen as soon as possible. Ma Kushuan in Xinghua Lane has a direct descendant. He is both the founding disciple and the closed disciple. This person is the town's master. The local people. As for the other apprentices recruited outside, it is Ma Kukshuan's trick. As for this person's name, I really can't say much." Xianwei was confused when he heard it, but he still nodded and agreed. Wei Bo followed Lu Shen to the mountain gate. Lu Shen said, "I have met Wei Shenjun." Wei Bo looked unhappy, "I don't dare to take it seriously." Lu Shen said from his heart, "A few years ago, Cui Guoshi came to Tiandu Peak and had some honest remarks with me." Wei Bo frowned slightly. With Lu Shen's cultivation and methods, he deliberately concealed it, and the Dali court couldn't find any clues even if they wanted to. Of course, the premise is that Lu Shen's cross-continental journey in settling in Dali have the permission or acquiescence of Cui Han, the national preceptor. Tiandu Peak is located between Luola Mountain and the town. It is closer to Luola Mountain than Tiaoyu Mountain and Fiolu. Therefore, it is not an ordinary close neighbor, but like a next-door neighbor. On the surface, the immortal capital peak, which has great meaning, and the landlord, recorded by the Dali court, are in Xianjia sect with similar background as the Huangliang sect. Over the years, Tiandu Peak, which has always been surrounded by immortals, has only a dozen or so mountain monks. There are no earthly immortals sitting on the top of the mountain. They live in seclusion, which is more like a closed mountain than Luola Mountain. Occasionally, a monk would come down the mountain, and a young monk who had not yet reached the 5th level of the middle school would go to the city to buy some firewood, rice, oil, and salt on a regular basis. Tiandu Peak and Luola Mountain have never had any contact, and they are not even familiar faces. The top of the main mountain of Tiandu Peak is slightly lower than the main mountain of Luola Mountain, Jiling Peak, so it does not hinder the line of sight. Chen Lingjun and the others can have an unobstructed view of the town from the top of their home. The identities of the 3 neighboring mountain masters are naturally kept in the archives of the Great Li dynasty. Wei Bo, as his immediate boss, the god of the 5 mountains, can of course consult them at will. But for so many years, Chen Pingan had no intention of exploring it, and Wei Bo never mentioned it without asking. Later, Fuyao Foothills was secretly bought by Pei Qian with money. Tiaoyu Mountain was the private property of Changchun Palace Gani and was also taken over by Cui Dongshan. Xiago fell in love with Tiandu Peak and wanted to spend money to buy it as a dowry. It's a pity that when she mentioned this to Wei Bo only said that he couldn't buy it with money, and he had to wait until the master of your mountain became the Grand Master of Dali. Xiago is not the mountain master. She has already confirmed that there is indeed no earth immortal in Tiandu Peak, and even the Supreme 5 realms are practicing there. Otherwise, if she breathes and refines qi even slightly, she will know about it. If there is a time-honored ascension realm hidden in the mountains that is very good at concealing the secrets of the heavens, if it does exist, it is fine to hide it very deep, but it is best for fellow Taoists not to move. When Lu Shen chose to show up on his own initiative, this was what made Wei Bo feel depressed and annoyed. According to Wei Bo's unique information channel, Tiandu Peak did have a real landlord hiding behind the scenes, but Wei Bo never expected that this person and his family were still the pawns pushed to the forefront by Lu Shen. Therefore, Wei Bo felt that it was his silence that misled the always cautious Chen Pingan. Damn it, this Tiandu Peak is the top of the mountain right under my nose. Wei Bo was scared to think about such a big mistake. Lu Shen, the head of the Lu family in Middle-earth, is so high in the sky that others respect you and fear you, but I, Wei Bo, will not tolerate you. Wei Bo was extremely unhappy, and Lu Shen was quite depressed. The appearance of the girl in the mink hat is a big trouble. She doesn't know whether it's because she is idle or because she has special powers, but she has a spiritual consciousness every now and then, regardless of day or night, without any rules at all. She often secretly patrols Tiandu Peak, doing things in an unruly manner. She is really unscrupulous. This even God Lu did not dare to take it lightly, so he could only set up 3 small heavens and add dozens of secret spell restrictions to cover up his own energy. Spending a little spiritual energy and a sum of fairy money is nothing, but it is a huge waste of time and makes Lu Shen helpless. Later, in the Lu family in Middle-earth, Chen Pingan and the girl in the mink hat returned to the world from the outer world. Evil guests came to the door, couldn't be more familiar. Not only is his swordsmanship amazing, he is also good at many Taoist arts. Even Lu Shen, who considers himself to be a good monk, almost doubts whether Bai Jing is similar to Wan Xiu and Li Lu. Lu Shen looked up at the mountain gate archway and said to himself, "The enemies of my enemies may not be friends, but at least there is a certain chance of becoming allies. Zhou Zi is my sworn enemy on the Great Road. He goes up to the world and down to the earth, and he can never get ahead. It's extremely painful. Since the goals are the same, he has his dragon-slaying skills, and I have my own dragon-drawing and dragon-supporting skills. Then let's show off our magical powers and compete. The matter of cultivating the Tao is to sail against the current. A Taoist heart must never retreat even a little bit, and a Taoist spirit must never fail in the slightest. Xiaomi Li had already sensed that something was wrong in the atmosphere. It was rare to see Wei Shanjun looking so annoyed, so she sat on the small bamboo chair, looking at her nose and heart, and her mind went to the old cook's kitchen. 55. The Xianwei was also sitting upright, but he looked at the young man with a great name from the corner of his eye. Judging from his attire, he didn't look like a rich man, but since he could have Wei Shanjun come to entertain guests in person, his identity must be very intimidating. Wei Bo didn't bother to talk around with Lu Xin, and sneered, "May I ask the head of the Lu family, when did you come to Tianda Peak to personally plan the great cause?" The state-owned legal family has family rules and rural covenants, and the high-ranking landscape gods are within their own jurisdiction. It is their duty to help the Orthodox court keep an eye on the developments of the monks and the immortal mansion. Lu Xin said calmly, "It is customary at the foot of the mountain that the winter solstice is like the new year. I arrived at Huaihuang County on this day. After some rough research, I chose Xiandu Peak as a temporary dojo. On the second day of the first lunar month of the new year, I was in the mountains, saw Shanju Chen's face for the first time." Note 1, Chapter 188 Rules and Trivialities. At that time, all the mountains in the west were undergoing large-scale construction, opening caves, building mansions, and adding immortality to the Taoist temples. Luopa Mountain had a mountain temple that was officially sanctioned by the imperial court because of Jilin Peak. Once it's settled, don't dare to spend a single copper coin less. The young mountain master had found something ready-made, and he didn't need to spend money on opening roads and other things out of his own pocket. As for making a swollen face and pretending to be fat, it had to be shown to others. At that time, Chen Pingan was only accompanied by Chen Lingjun and Wan Shu. There was a big mountain, just the three of them, and at most one mountain without assistants or maids. On this day, according to local customs, he was supposed to start visiting relatives to pay New Year greetings. Naturally, Chen Pingan had no relatives to go with, so he simply took the boy in green and the girl in pink to the mountains. Lu Xin couldn't help but have a complicated look on his face, and said slowly, "The boy with straw sandals on the road is close to the water. He looks up at the clouds and the jackal. He carries water and fire, and a hatchet at his waist. He goes up the mountain and climbs to the top to see the sky." On Difei Mountain, Mao Zhui seems to be teaching the swordsman Nan Chang. Lord Heavenly Lord Yin Xian was extremely pleased. Taoism emphasizes the relaxation of nature and the natural way of Taoism. So you can work steadily and easily become an immortal. This is your ability. Whether ordinary people can cultivate Taoism depends on whether there is a way to come. After entering the mountains, they start to refine their qi and preserve their spirits. Whether they can finally achieve Taoism depends on whether they can find a way out. The mountains stand tall and the rivers flow, just like people express their feelings. But no matter how high the mountains are, can they pierce the sky? No matter how majestic the rivers are, the destination is still the sea. You are a student of swordsmanship and have devoted your life to pursuing the origin of swordsmanship. Therefore, it is difficult to find people who share the same path while practicing in Difei Mountain. It is inevitable that you will feel that you are alone in your way. Over time, as your level increases, you will easily become arrogant. Arrogant. Of course, you also have your difficulties. As the abbot of Damu Temple and commanding more than 100 sword cultivators, you need to bear the honor and disgrace of the Huayang Palace sword immortal lineage. You can use this convenient method to unite people's hearts without any question. Nan Chang smiled and said, "More than 100 people." This was clearly her starting to find fault. Palace Master Mao had just entered Huayang Palace, so he must be busy with official duties and not familiar with the specific situation of Demugwen, a Taoist tributary, which is reasonable. Even though Mao Zhui had recommended her as the leader of Difei Mountain, Nan Chang should be somewhat grateful, but she always had an indescribable awkwardness when getting along with him. When a cultivator with a keen sense of spiritual awareness has such inspiration, he must not take it lightly. The sleeping area should be small so that it is easy to rest your mind. The study room should be large enough to gather energy. Therefore, the library is very tall and covers a large area, and Mao Zhui's residence is very small. He just randomly picked a small courtyard near the gate. There is actually a white gauze mosquito net in the house that is common in people's homes down the mountain. Not to mention the enlightened people in the mountains, even those accomplished martial arts warriors can drive away mosquitoes and flies by themselves with an invisible force of energy, and frighten the wild beasts in the mountains. It's a good thing that no one visited the humble house, otherwise everyone in the south would be suspicious. This Bone Master, who has obviously reached the ascended realm long ago, lives such a simple and ordinary life. Who is he showing off to? Mao Zhui said calmly, Damu Temple is a Taoist priest, and the ancestral hall has a total of 6 generations of genealogy, a total of 105 people. You have been in retreat recently, and I will only know better than you where all of them are currently practicing Taoism. Nan Chang asked, it seems that Gao Qiong is going to retreat. Has fellow Taoist White Bones seen her? She was a little girl that Patriarch Gao brought back from his hometown a few years ago. Her qualifications were not very outstanding, but the palace master personally led the person up the mountain. Nan Chang and Demugwen were certainly very fond of her. Mao Zhui said, according to the secret manual passed down to Gao Qiong by Tsuewei Palace, if she practices step by step to break through seclusion, something will definitely go wrong. She will not be able to pass the dragon gate, and she will most likely fall into the realm. I have asked someone to do it. Secretly taught her 2 sword arts, one specifically about dividing water, and the other about refining mirage swords. When she reaches the point where her mind is in tune, the Taoist formula will be able to manifest the dragon gate and a river in Baidi City, and the Taoist priest will be immersed in it, shaped like a water dragon walking across the river to climb the dragon gate. It can increase her chances of winning. Nan Chang was very surprised. He never thought that our palace master Mao really knew all the sword cultivators at Demugwen. Is it because Grandmaster Gao had secretly given instructions before, or was Mao Zhui trying to open up the situation through Damu Temple? The new official took office, and the sword immortal lineage that had not made much progress in the hands of Grandmaster Gao, if it starts to flourish on Mao Zui's side, isn't this a common tactic used by Shanshui officialdom? Mao Zhui said, Lu Chen has a study, which is not located in Nanhua City, his dojo. It is built in Yushu City and is called Guanqian Sword Studio. Nancheng didn't know what Mao Zhui was doing when he mentioned this. Isn't this something known to the whole world? Mao Zhui said slowly, it's prepared for me. Nan Chang was stunned. She openly admitted her mistake and said with shame, fellow Taoist White Bones, I judged a gentleman with a villain's heart and looked down on you. Mao Zhui said, no matter who inherits the Taoist lineage of Huayang Palace, you will be hostile to him. You feel that no matter the merits and morals of any Taoist official, he is not worthy of sitting in the chair of the Patriarch Hall. Furthermore, you are a human being. He is a Taoist priest who is particularly energetic, and he is also a sword cultivator, so when you stand next to Master Baigu, who is also a sword cultivator, it is natural that you feel a potential danger, which is a kind of prediction that goes beyond instinct. If I were in Huayang Palace. If you have murderous intentions, you will be the second to notice. Nan Chang asked curiously, who is the first, Yin Tianjun? Mao Zhui glanced at Nan Chang, maybe he didn't quite understand why she asked such a question. Behind the south wall, I finally realized the truth. It was the real owner of this mountain, the Tai mountain god. Mao Zhui walked to the water's edge. Perhaps the fish swimming in the pond mistakenly thought he was his old master, and started to gather around him. The old blind man cut out his eyes, and forcibly cut off a piece of land in the wilderness to create 100,000 mountains. The 5 elements of native gold kept moving into the mountains, supplemented by the group of divine generals and warriors wearing golden armor, suppressing the powerful Tao Qi from all the air palaces, and the body almost rises to the sky, preventing the body from rising to the sky. The master of Bixiao Cave in Luobayan, and later Donghaiguan Taoist Temple, have been so unforgiving since ancient times. If anyone dares to harm Pindo's Taoism, Pindao will cut off your favorable circumstances. Pure freedom, the ability to do everything you want to do, say no to anything you don't want to do, and be completely able to bear the cost. How many ordinary people give up the glory and wealth of the world and go to the mountains to seek immortality? They only seek enlightenment and longevity, and extravagantly hope to live as long as heaven and earth. Only Lu Chen's pursuit has never been the so-called 15 realms, or even the perfection of the Great Road, but only to see my true self. I don't know whether he was touched by the scene or just sentimental. He lowered his head and stared at the fish in the water. In an instant, the fish mistakenly thought that there was bait in the water. They scrambled for food for a while, but in the end it was all in vain and they all dispersed. Except for the swordsmanship that breaks through the illusion of life and death, it seems that Lu Chen has given all his longing for the world to a pair of bones. Luoshan Mountain. Chen Lingjun was burping with wine all the way back from the Tifu River water god mansion. The boy in green had sharp eyes and saw what seemed to be a visitor at the mountain gate. He immediately put away his magic, pressed down the cloud head, floated on the road, and concentrated on it. Look again and again, it's okay, it doesn't look like the heroic figures in the collection of passers-by, then go and meet for a while, have enough wine and food, and feel in good spirits. This was not a mistake between him and the new water god by Deng and Rongxing Miaozhuang. They were all brothers. They had not seen each other for several days and missed them very much. They made an appointment for the 3 brothers to have a good meal today. Before picking up the glasses, they did not forget to remind Bai Deng to only have a small drink and not to delay official duties. Xingqiu packed up his clothes and went to Shuifu to help his brothers. He worked as a dog-headed military advisor, taking care of his criminal title, money and food, and being a master. He made money in a good way and controlled his subordinates well. Remind Bai Deng of many tips for dealing with people, how to deal with bosses, control subordinates, and make friends with colleagues, clearly. Bai Deng's character and temper were indeed a bit rough due to his Tao roots. Thanks to Tsing's mistakes in planning and Chen Lingjun's checking and filling in the gaps, he saved a lot of effort. The position of the water god is now secure. Chen Lingjun swung his sleeves and walked towards the mountain gate. He found Wei Bo and the young man with an unfamiliar face looking at him with respect. It's strange, there's something wrong with Wei Bo ever since he became the night god. His nose is not a nose, his eyes are not eyes. Is the sun coming out in the west today? Finally, he found that Xiao Mili and Xian Wei were winking at him and gesturing behind him. Chen Lingjun turned his head and was startled. It turned out that 2 people came up the road and they looked like scholars. Chen Lingjun looked happy, turned around, put his hands on his hips, stood in the middle of the road, and laughed loudly. Nephew Jingshi. We saw each other last time, long time no see. Jingzhuzhong smiled and nodded. Lu Xiang on the side had no expression on his face. Tut. I have seen people who are cruel and life-threatening, but I have never seen someone who dares to mistreat Jingzhuzhong as Jingzhuzhong. Jingzhuzhong just didn't have his name engraved on his forehead. The kid in Xingyi couldn't recognize it. Chen Lingjun was wondering why the temporarily unidentified scribe looked a bit stooped. Lu Shen on the other side of the mountain gate remained calm, but his eyelids trembled slightly. Chen Lingjun strode towards the apprentice of his brother Chenjuliu, put his hand to his mouth, and said in a low voice, "My nephew, if you haven't had time to find an inn in the county, why not stay at my house in the mountains?" You can choose the east and west wings. If you don't like it, the houses on both sides are small, so we'll just leave the main house for you to live in. If my family doesn't speak the same language, there will be no host or guest, so you won't be polite or pretentious. After thinking about it again, the boy in Tsing-yi quickly added, if you like to be quieter and more comfortable, there are a few nice houses in the mountains. It'll take you to have a look. Let me know if you like them. Poor scholars are all good-looking. Understand? Then the friends around the poor scholar must not be rich, Lao liar. Weibo had nothing to say and put his hand on his forehead. But he was too lazy to explain anything to Chen Lingjun. This has been the case for so many years. Xing Juzhong said, Xian Ling, no need. Chen Lingjun was obviously a little disappointed. He fisted his fist and smiled brightly again, I have to have a meal before leaving. I have a good cook at home, and his skills are quite good. Lu Fang smiled and helped to relieve the situation. Unfortunately, fellow Taoist Jingqing, we just had a home-cooked meal at Zhao Shuxia and Ning Jie's place. Chen Lingjun was not discouraged. Then let's talk about it next time, save this meal for now. Good brother Chen Julio was a poor scholar with little money in his pocket and a thin face. Scholars have such virtues, so Chen Lingjun and the old cook borrowed some serious books, sorted them into categories, and put them on the table. It is convenient for them to browse through it when they live there one day. Set up a table in the yard, and there are only empty wine glasses on the table. There is no point in empty wine jugs. There is enough wine. Calling by Mangan, plus brother Jia, who has always been in love with him, called him up the mountain. Then the four of them would gather at a table, fist pump and drink, having a good time. Every morning, whoever gets up first, just shouts when walking out of the door, an arrow pierces the clouds and thousands of troops come to meet each other. Brothers, where is the morning wine? Chen Lingjun remembered something and said from the bottom of his heart, my nephew, to tell you the truth, I have always had a bright mind and am famous for not being confused about important matters. This is not because I was sitting on the steps chatting and spanking with your master earlier. I am not thinking of you and when you can chat with Master Sheng and Big White Goose. I thought this was quite strange. My brain twitched and I was confused. I guess you are the demon Zheng from Baidi City. Ba, Tong Yan Wuji, must be the righteous and heroic Mr. Zheng. Hey, he almost scared himself to death. Lu Xian and Lu Shen looked at each other, and then they both looked at Wei Shenjun, the chivalrous and courageous Xing Juzhong. Who taught Luo Shan? Wei Bo had no choice but to rely on his understanding and self-taught. Xing Juzhong smiled and said, if I were Xing Juzhong, then wouldn't my master be Qin Qinglu? If he were Qin Qinglu, you and the man who killed the dragon could be brothers. From now on, what are you afraid of? Wei Bo was inevitably a little worried. No matter how outspoken Chen Lingjun is in his words and actions, he is still a conscientious person. Lu Fang was more curious about how the boy in Tsing-yi would respond. Lu Shen felt that murderous intent was everywhere as soon as Xing Juzhong said these words. Unexpectedly, the boy in green just tilted his head and remained still. It was hard to tell whether his eyes were clear or confused. He just stayed there, After staying for a long time and shaking his head vigorously, Chen Lingjun stretched out a finger and shook it. No, that's not the calculation. I don't know the specific reason, so I don't know much about it. Xing Juzhong said, what about leaving some for now? Chen Lingjun laughed endlessly. To be able to chat with him, he must be someone who has read but not read much. Lu Shen felt as if he was facing a formidable enemy, and his heartstrings became tense. Why did Xing Juzhong come here? Even so, Lu Shen still acted politely with the people around Xing Juzhong, holding his breath and concentrating, performing an ancient ritual. Lu Shi just turned a blind eye. Going to the mountain gate and walking, the boy in green clothes first exchanged a fist salute with the strange young man who was very polite. He seemed to have thought of an explanation, scratched his head, and said a sincere word to the nephew Zheng Shi. I just want to make a few true friends. It doesn't matter whether their status is high or low, whether their wealth is big or small, whether their money bags are bulging or flat. The tabletop where the wine and bowls are placed is always flat. Zheng Juzhong was stunned, smiled knowingly, nodded and said, Uncle sure knows how to drink. Sword of Coming Chapter 1152. A group of visitors rested under the vines, drank tea, and listened to Taoist sermons, feasting their ears to the melodious sound of jade chimes. The aura of heaven and earth brought up rippled like running water, as if all the ancient branches and leaves near the Taoist temple had been washed, making them greener and greener. Since Huayong Palace had not yet issued an order to expel guests, they walked all the way to the Patriarch's palace and gradually climbed up along the main Shinto. From a wide field of vision, they could see the Defei Mountain ferry in the distance. In the field of vision, the figures of Taoist officials could be seen. As small as an ant, coming and going like a shuttle. There is a huge cross-state dragon boat, which is the most eye-catching. It is 100 feet long and more than 10 feet wide. The head and tail scales and beards are all carved with gold ornaments. The buildings on the ship are like Qianglu and Yiyu, planted with ancient pines and strange cypresses, just like a complete Taoist temple. It is said that this famous ferry belonging to Tsuewei Palace has a mystery hidden at the bottom of the cabin. Large iron coins are densely arranged like a tabletop, which is called successful money, to withstand the tilt of the hull caused by clouds, waves, wind, and rain during the voyage. The young man with a fierce face was the first to break the silence and asked, the ancestor of the military strategist, Grand Master Jiang, has been silent for thousands of years. This time he joins hands with his Taoist companions to come out again. The noise is not small, and he must have a big plan. If you are him, what will we do? Use local materials and make some deductions. On the top of the mountain, Mao Zhui began to look at this group of children from aristocratic families with admiration. They were not very young and capable, but they were very courageous and bold. Yin Xian looked even more embarrassed. These troublemakers who knew nothing about the world really dared to talk about anything. However, it can be seen that Hong Nongyang is indeed well informed. There are many Taoist officials in the dynasty who have never even heard of the surname of the ancestor of the military family. There was a young man holding a wicker that he stole from somewhere, shaking his wrist, walking leisurely, and said with a smile, the first step is to enter the ancestral palace of the main military family. If you can use the Zhongtu martial arts temple as a private dojo, right? But Jiang Taigong, Mr. Wei and others are willing to give up. This is a huge problem that is destined to be unavoidable. If I go all out to attack the ancestors, since I am a military strategist, I have to. Hey, Grandmaster Jiang, Mr. Jiang, it's such a coincidence that they both have the surname Jiang. I don't know if that's right. One dares to ask and the other dares to answer. How can outsiders dare to show off? Mao Zhui said, it's hard to say what the specific sex family education is, but it is certain that he has a close relationship with the Tai lineage. At least he has dealt with Wang, who likes to raise geese more than once or twice. Just say that the scholar around Shangjiao has a good background and is not something that ordinary people can control. Shanin Yuk's surname is Wang, Tao name is Tai, the owner of the dry lake in Xiasizu, the old Taoist priest and Lei Yu, who is from the demon clan, are all candidates. Nan Cheng failed to see the background of the lazy book boy and asked curiously, strange or mysterious? Weird, either an old immortal, who began to practice in ancient times or even ancient times, or an ancient object became a spirit, gave birth to a little true spirit, transformed into a human form, and embarked on the path of cultivation. Miraculous attributes are mostly the reincarnation of gods or the turning around of a certain great monk. Mao Zhui said, "When we meet, you can ask yourself." Nan Chang smiled sweetly and said, "Since I can't use magic to see through their deception, it's just like guessing lantern riddles. It's quite interesting." Mao Zhui narrowed his eyes. For some reason, he changed his mind temporarily and said to Yin Xian beside him, "Yin Xian, please pass on the message and allow them to go up the mountain. Let's meet and chat for a few words." It's really a mixed bag. There are more than 10 people in this mountaineering team. After careful research on the origins of their families and dojos, it turned out that there are at least 4 places. He would like to see the rhetoric, the talk on paper, and the nonsense. It's still true talent and practical learning, with a clear goal. Yin Xian's face was troubled. There was no set rule on how to treat guests here. It was said that no one came to congratulate Mao Zhui for his promotion to the palace master. This was an isolated case in the mountains. Mao Zhui said, "It doesn't matter, just go and stay at my house." Yin Xian breathed a sigh of relief. In this way, Huayang Palace's etiquette was quite sufficient. In this truly mixed mountaineering team, the Hongnongyang family has a pair of siblings, 2 accompanying maids, and a guard. The apparent identity of the siblings who submitted the ultimatum at the mountain gate shows that they are not Taoist officials now, Yang Jing or Yang Yu. The boy's name is not ordinary. The woman wearing a power fence has a graceful figure even though her face is covered. There is a maid on the side gently swinging a folding fan. The fan depicts a magpie on a branch, which means joy. The handsome young man wears a 3-mountain crown on his head, a refreshing deep purple straitjacket, and a sash tied around his waist. Yang Huang looked arrogant and liked to look at people sideways, and rarely looked at people directly. Su Shiyuan smiled and said, "I would like to ask, is the deaf Taoist your disciple?" The territory of the little 4 prefectures is not small. Bai Yujing's battle to encircle and suppress the alien demons caused a continent to sink into a lake, and the waters were vast. Many casual cultivators and private Taoist priests who could not deal with Bai Yujing liked to operate their influence here. Su Shiyuan was no stranger to the customs of Xia Sizu, and he had never heard of any deaf Taoist. Tian Gong shook his head and did not want to say anything more. After all, it involves the extremely private Taoist lineage. Su Shiyuan did not ask any more questions, changed the subject, and asked casually, "Fellow Taoist Jinxing, how do you view the matter of cultivation?" Tian Gong thought for a moment and said, "To learn Taoism is to read ancient books." Good argument. Su Shiyuan nodded and smiled, "Fellow Taoist Jinxing, if I have the chance, I'll treat you to a goose stewed in an iron pot." Before going up the mountain, Su Shiyuan learned through casual conversations that the farmer claimed that he had practiced cultivation in the immortal family since he was young, but that he had not been able to practice the Dharma. He suffered from the lack of guidance from a master, was deaf in one ear, and had injuries to his organs. He then went out, seeking immortality, traveling across mountains and rivers, looking for enlightened people who can cure diseases and guide people to become immortals. Fortunately, there is no end to the road, and he found a cheap practitioner in the market who was playing in the world of mortals. After many tests, the master saw that he was firm in his Taoism, so he led him up the mountain and practiced a genuine immortal method. That's why Su Shiyuan guessed that the deaf Taoist was the tutor of the Tian Song who went astray in the past and lost one ear. Su Shiyuan once thought that the best candidate to be a disciple was Gao Gu of Huayang Palace. For this reason, he made a special trip to a Taoist temple in Daifishan Mountain and became the resident Taoist priest. He remained anonymous for more than 100 years and learned the 8 classics seriously. Talisman, I started to refine the elixir honestly. It's a pity that Gao Gu has been watching Su Shiyuan for several years, but never fell in love with Su Shiyuan. Perhaps he didn't want the young man to continue to waste his time, so he took the initiative to show up and persuade him to go down the mountain and find another master. Gao Gu has made his position so clear that Su Shiyuan can't help but stay in the Taoist temple, especially since Gao Gu also suggested that he go to Zayasizu. Only then did Su Shiyuan go there, and he actually got to know the old man who raised geese. The Taoist priests learned many techniques from Wang, but they did not have the status of master and disciple. Tian Song only regarded it as a polite word, smiled and nodded in agreement. When a person is in a foreign land, wandering and helpless, he is inevitably lonely. It is an unexpected joy for him to find a friend who meets him. Luo Yi knew the inside story and was helpless. Su Ziyuan's goose stewed in an iron pot. If you can't help it, don't eat it. Su Shiyuan laughed from the bottom of his heart and said, "Fellow Taoist Jin Xing, like me, you all use a pseudonym, right?" Tian Gong hesitated for a moment and nodded. Su Shiyuan patted Tian Gong on the shoulder. "To be honest, my real name is quite famous. Just don't mention it. Making friends requires heart-to-heart communication, not names." Tian Gong smiled and said, "My real name is unknown. It doesn't matter whether I say it or not." Su Shiyuan held Tian Gong's shoulders and lowered his voice. "Then let's talk about it and tell us our real names." Tian Song just shook his head. Su Shiyuan lowered his voice and said, "Actually, my surname is Chen and my first name is Pingon. It's good for you to know. Don't spread it outside." Tian Gong was stunned on the spot and looked at this person blankly. I don't know if I was shocked by Shang Jiao's shamelessness, or if I suspected that I had made a mistake and mistook Shang Jiao as the kind of person who could be a friend. It turned out that I was warm and attentive, but they were all other people's joking behavior. Su Mian suddenly stared when he heard this, and reminded him in his heart, "Remember not to call Yingguan by name." Every time verification appears, please do not use incognito mode. Su Shiyuan was frustrated. Huang Zhen patted the back of Su Ziyuan's hand and said with a smile, "Since Taoist friend Shang Jiao has made the secret, I have to be wise. The single name, wood, water, fire and earth are all fake." Su Shiyuan let go of his hand and was confused. At this time, a Taoist priest from Huayang Palace came up the mountain and said that the palace master wanted to invite you all. While I was still thinking, my sister Su Yingjia smiled and helped to answer the question. Wood, water, fire and earth, among the 5 elements, there is still gold missing. Since they are all false, there must be something true. Adding the true character to the radical of the word gold means town. The Taoist nickname of Yu Tian Gong also matches. A single name contains the word town. Su Shiyuan suddenly realized, single name town. So what about the real last name? Su Ying saw that his younger brother was confused and would ignore such obvious clues. Isn't the name of Tian Communist Party the answer? Just when she was about to solve the riddle for him, she looked up and saw the couplets on the plaque of Wanwan Tower, and changed her mind. Luo Yi asked, "Why are you so interested in this Tian Gong?" Su Shiyuan joked, "Why do you think our Tiansong brothers have ordinary qualifications, smell of earthiness, and can't stand the Dharma's eyes? You are a mud-legged person who looks down on mud-legged people." Luo Yi laughed dumbly. Scholars all like to tell lies. As the founding emperor of the largest dynasty in a state, Luo Yi is only good at making scholars cut off their heads one by one. In fact, Luo Yi came from a very low background. He rose from a small soldier in the border army to his current high position step by step. Naturally, he would not look down on him just because he saw that the Tian Communist Party was not from a wealthy family. Besides, what does a wealthy family mean? Think back to that year, when Qin Kuan decided to launch the founding of the People's Republic of China, when his soldiers and horses entered the old capital, several streets were filled with blood, all from the mansions of the yellow and purple princes. The flow out will make the horses' hooves slip. At that time, there were conspirators around me who advised me that this move was inappropriate. Ignore it. If you kill too many people, you will easily lose people's hearts. It will not look good in the history books of future generations. Luo Yi sat high on the horse, with a calm expression, and just replied, I have to take care of it, the knife is too slow. Su Shiyuan said quietly, my two sisters are famous for their high vision and accurate judgment of people. I won't mention what they think of brother Wu Shi. I'm just talking about you. Glancing at Su Mian, the stoic man hummed and remained silent for a moment. If you don't speak the same language as one family, you will call me brother-in-law from now on. Wu Shi did not proclaim himself emperor like Luo Yi, but he was recognized as the supreme emperor by the entire Peizhou. As a result, on the border of Yongzhou, Zhu Xian, the empress of the Yufu dynasty, seemed to have lost her mind and went crazy. She acted arbitrarily and built the universal Jiao. Divination of the four states. Peizhou happens to be one of them. As a result, it was naturally impossible for Wu Shi to accompany his two sworn brothers on a trip. Especially the destination is Huayang Palace. If Wu Shi dares to show up at Difei Mountain at this time, it is estimated that in the eyes of Baiyujing Taoist officials, it will be the same as that of a rebellion. In the early years, after learning that Lizhu Cave had fallen from the sky and was consecrated as a blessed place, the ambitious Wu Shi had always wanted to find an opportunity to travel around the world and invite the true Dragon King Zhu to Qingming world. When they reached the top of the mountain, Yin Xian of Tsuiwei Palace and the south wall of Damu Temple had been waiting for a long time. Palace Master Mao Zhui was not waiting at the door. Indeed, even if the head of the Hongnongyang family arrived, he might not be able to treat Mao Zhui, who has a double clone, well. Yin Xian led them into the courtyard of Palace Master Mao. There was a main room with an 8 immortals table and 4 wooden stools. They were all made from nearby materials and chopped by Mao Zhui himself. The sword light suddenly rises, awakeningly Long, who is trapped in the mud pond, and has been sleeping for a long time. The rivers and lakes are wet with foam, the night is long and the water is cold, and the pearls on the chin are like lamps. The wind and thunder force him, and his scales and beard spread out. In the darkroom for thousands of years, my soul is ruthless. A single point makes it clear, and everything in the sky and the earth is illuminated. Not to mention Yin Xian, who was the most disciplined person, felt that the boy was rude. Even Nan Chang, who was already informal enough, couldn't help but frown. Do you really regard Huayang Palace as your own home? On the contrary, Mao Zhui still had Gu Jing's unwavering attitude. In the past, I set up a stall outside Zuxiguen to rent comic books. After I closed the stall, I found that the comic books were full of fingerprints and even snot. Yang Zheng stood up, went to the study, grabbed the young man's ears, and pushed him down on the bench. Previously, Mao Zhui stood at the door, watching the guests filing in. The first sight of Master Bai Gu fell on the maid behind the mealy woman. How brave you are to come to Difei Mountain. Mao Zhui looked at the escaped young man at this moment, the real master. In Guanyu Pavilion, the old man seemed to be able to isolate himself from the world by the water without the need for words. He was confident that he could hide it from the old man with white bones. He smiled and said, "Too many words lead to mistakes. You shouldn't mention your name to Shang Jiao. It's just one thing. His family has a big business and he can't afford to lose anything if he makes a mistake. Can you? Of course you can't. If you make one wrong move, you will suffer a fate of eternal disaster. It's the same as entrusting you to my care, not for you to make mistakes. If you are a dumb person, you will know your own suffering. Be careful when you go out, and learn more from the Yingguan of similar age." One who can turn a gloomy life into magnificence is a hero. Wei Bo and Lu Xun looked at each other with disgust, but they treated a being like Lu Shi, a high-ranking mountain and yin-yang family who investigated the 5 elements of heaven, with far more courtesy than ordinary monks. Seeing Lu Shi, who was born from the manifestation of vast heaven and earth, was a rare seeing the way. It was like a businessman complaining that he had never seen big money in his life, and then he saw Lu Jubao alive. Lu Fan was beside him. Although Wei Bo was a little reserved, he was not as silent as a cicada. Since Lu Fan was interested in listening, Wei Bo was happy to help Chen Pingan, Luo Luoshan, and Lu Fan gain some momentum. Wei Bo let out a laugh. Continuing the previous topic, Qi, what is Qi? The word Qi means rugged mountains and rocks, barren and rough, sparse vegetation and lack of vitality. According to the saying on the mountain, it is an empty mountain, similar to straight water. According to the common principles of feng shui, Luopa mountain is large and empty, so it is not easy to gather qi, so it is not suitable to be opened as a Taoist temple. Either an empty mountain consumes the spirit of the practitioner, or the Taoist needs to bring many foreign objects and rare treasures to fill the hole in the feng shui. In short, it is easy for the trainer and the dojo to conflict. In this case, what is the use of buying such a dojo? Lu Xun said, on the surface, this mountain is really useless, so it is not in the eyes of ordinary qi practitioners. However, in the long run, it is consistent with Chen Pingan's fate. Wei Bo sneered and said, Lu Wei is an immortal after all, why not take Luopa mountain to safety first? Taking a step back, the Lu family has the advantage of first move, so they should cast a wide net, let alone Luopa mountain. If we include Tiandu Peak, Tiaoyu mountain, and Fuyao foothills in a line in the south, what's the problem? Please enlighten me. At that time, the empress of the Great Li dynasty, Nan Han, whose real name was Lu Jiang, had not yet become the abandoned son of the Lu family in China. She was extremely powerful in the court. At least half of the spies were under her control. At that time, everyone would think that they belonged to the late emperor. A kind of check and balance technique, Xiu who manages the government, vassal King Song Changjing is in charge of the border army, and Nan Hao handles intelligence. Among the three, they will mix sand with each other, plus those with surnames from Shangzhou Kingdom. In short, no one is allowed when one party becomes more powerful, it has the opportunity to arbitrarily determine the direction of the government and exercise dictatorship. History can explain 99 of 100 things, but there is always one thing that creates new history for future generations to learn from. Lu Xun shook his head, I can't do it. I have enough will but not enough strength. Yunlin Jiang's family is very stable. Even if she notices changes in the heavenly secrets, she still has the patience to endure and does not dare to act rashly. At most, they just beat around the bush and ask Jiang Yun, a concubine, to come here to seek opportunities and take the opportunity to explore the depths. He would never bet all his wealth and life on this. What's more, a screen was set up and Lu Laoqing moved out Shujian Lake to prevent disasters. In any case, Aquarius Continent's first 5-level wild cultivator in the past 1,000 years must be blessed with good fortune. The master-disciple relationship between Lu Laoqing and Jiang Yun is like the screen wall at the family house at the foot of the mountain, which can replace Yunlin Jiang family, blocks evil spirits. Although in the Dali Palace, Lu Wei had proposed cooperation with Chen Pingan. But Lu Wei's proposal at that time seemed too insincere, and he simply treated Chen Pingan as a fool. Chen Pingan revealed the secret and exposed the Lu family's plan. Through the Earth Mirror chapter, he selected a hilltop corresponding to Luola Mountain to survey the latitude and longitude veins of the 3 Yuans and 9 Lux, the Liujia talisman and so on. It can not only survey geography, but also observe celestial phenomena. Maybe this is Lucian's fault. Hashtag every time verification appears, please do not use incognito mode. The method of the Bureau attempts to break the invisible barriers set by Zhou Zi, law of the sky and the earth, and finally merge into the 14th realm of Tao. Previously, Jing Qingjia came to Luopa Mountain to find Xiaomo to acknowledge her ancestors and return to the clan. Jing Dafeng had answered her, humbly asking some questions, but the latter had little knowledge after all and did not hear the implication of Jing Dafeng's words, and she could not take the opportunity to deduce more details. Lots of amazing inside information. For example, 3 souls and 7 souls are linked to life and death. When a person is alive in the world, his soul is unified, and his body and soul are in harmony. Therefore, after death, the soul ascends to heaven and the soul body falls to the ground, each in its own place. Therefore, a series of sacrificial rituals and incense rituals were derived. The gods in temples and the souls in tombs were prayed for, and they were worshipped and received incense respectively. In the ancient site of the heavenly palace, the god's throne has existed forever. For thousands of years, it has never lacked its throne due to the collapse of the heavenly way. Old Man Yang, or the Qingtong Tianjun, one of the 12 high-ranking gods, holds an ascension platform in his hand to hide the sky from the sky. The place where the real dragon fell is also used to confuse the sky, and even the old sword hanging at the bottom of the bridge, it is still a blindfold. Sword of Coming Chapter 1154. The young Taoist priest and the little girl in black brought tea. They didn't take up a seat and went to sit on the bamboo chairs. Lu Xian thanked them, drank the hot tea, blew on it, and took a sip. The surface of the tea bowl looked like a small mirror. If astronomy is a wordless book left by the gods to the human world, then the water that is slightly rippling in the bowl on the table at this moment is just like the traces of human affairs in the world. Lu Xian was worried, borrowing a book. I'm afraid that Jing Juzhong was deliberately vague, but in fact he came here to borrow fate and borrow the way. Borrowing my books, coming to kill my people and steal my teachings. Nowadays, among the desolate mountains, isn't there a person who likes to borrow Taoist names from fellow Taoists? Bai Jing possesses more than 30 completely cut off incense channels. How did he come to be? Lu Xian had to admit that there was no chance of winning against Jing Juzhong in a battle of wits, courage and strength. For the time being, there are still many monks who have not noticed a certain terrible truth. Nowadays, in the world, or simply the entire world, the only person who can restrain Jing Juzhong is the Lixing who must stay outside the sky. Also like Yudo. Wild and spectacular. So Lu Xian's only support at the moment is that Jing Juzhong is too inhuman, and every move he makes will be watched by the Confucian temple? Jing Juzhong said directly, "Don't think too much, it's just the literal meaning, I want to borrow the earth mirror from you." Lu Xian asked in confusion, "Mr. Zheng is a scholar of heaven and man, but he is also interested in this book. What's more, if Jing Juzhong really wanted to read this book, with his cultivation level and the Lu family's magic ban, could he stop him?" Even if Lu Xian knew that the forbidden area was being robbed, he would probably turn a blind eye and let Jing Juzhong quietly read the book. Jing Juzhong picked up the tea bowl and took a sip of tea, then squinted at Lu Xian. "You really think I don't know? There are 3 volumes of Earth Mirror. The original version of the Earth Mirror chapter of the Lu family can be read by the direct disciples of the Lu family who have verified their aptitude and Taoist heart. After being perfected by Lu Xian, it has been supplemented and has many personal annotations. Only some ancestors and meritorious deeds are qualified to read the second book, and Lu Xian himself is the third book. Jing Juzhong has long been familiar with all the contents of the first 2 local mirror chapters. Lu Wei and others' understanding and attainment of the local mirror chapters are definitely not as good as Jing Juzhong, an outsider. They meet on the road, and it is hard to say who will give guidance to whom. Lu Xian took a deep breath. Lu Fang knew one thing. Zhou Zi had indeed stayed in Gong Dolin for a period of time. How to negotiate and how to behave more appropriately has become the key to the academic level, the depth of the city, and the success or failure of both parties. So it was Cui Han's intention to allow you to land on Aquarius continent and enter the world of Old Li Zhu Cave. As for talking to you about Lu's bet on Aquarius continent, he deliberately teased you. Lu Qi put his hands on his sleeves, leaned against the back of the chair, and said with a smile, "If you don't touch his back, if you don't see his person when you walk in the court, there is no blame." Hearing some clues, Wei Bo asked, "Mr. Lu, according to the hexagram explanation, why didn't the Lu family just replace Tianda Peak in the east of Luola Mountain with Huimeng Mountain in the north? Wouldn't it be more in line with the concept of Zhen Qibei explain?" Lu Xun's face was bitter, and he shook his head slightly and said, "The foundation of Huimeng Mountain is too thin, the Tao Qi is shallow, and the top of the mountain is a bit low. I am not suitable to stay there." Originally, with Lu Wei's level of cultivation, it was suitable to open a dojo in Huimeng Mountain, but the Lizhu Cave sky shattered and fell to the ground, and Lu Wei, whose Taoist heart was already damaged, was determined not to stay for a moment longer. In addition, Queen Nan Hairpin, whose real name is Lu Jiang, is indeed an extremely critical chess piece, so the family asked Lu Wei to go to Dali capital to protect her. When Song He ascended the throne and proclaimed himself emperor, Nan Hairpin became a key piece. To the Empress Dowager, Song Mu was vassalized in Luojing, the capital of the imperial court. Even if Lu Wei made up for his mistakes, he only needed to meet Qin Pingan one more time to return to the family. As Lu Shi said before, when it comes to the life of the Tao and the rise and fall of the family, how dare God Lu dare to take responsibility for it casually? However, choosing a location in Tiandu Peak is not without its benefits. On the contrary, it has the wonderful advantage of another village with hidden flowers and bright flowers. What Lu Xun seeks is that his actions are appropriate, his actions and stillness are appropriate, and his path is bright. I have never touched the ancestral home in Nipin Lane. I have obtained the boxing book, practiced martial arts with heart, and practiced boxing to save my life. This is not the so-called prolonging life with illness. I am not greedy for money, and I like to be the boy who is good at making money. I don't want to talk about others behind their backs. There are so many different things that are right and wrong, and they all fit together perfectly, and they are all appropriate. Speaking of this, Lu Shixiao asked, "Is this considered destiny?" Xing Juzhong said calmly, "As we sit here, do we count ourselves as destined? Even if our destiny is determined by heaven, we still seek our own blessings." Chen Pingan, whose birthday was May 5th, was in the 9-5-year plan. In the palace where the two sides were sitting, the two sides did not completely fall out. It would be an easy thing to chop off Lu Jiang's head. Lu Wei shook his head and said, "Playing chess is not about playing scores, and life is not like playing chess. Planning and planning are not as good as the wisdom and courage at that time, and it also depends on luck." Cui Chan made many miscalculations, but they were soon eliminated by him. Corrected. For Cui Chan, if the preacher and protector on the mountain just handed down a few mantras, gave a few secret books of exercises, and gave a few magic weapons, then it would be too easy to go to the mountain to seek immortality. Pursue nothing wrong. There is a lake of slips and slips, no matter how hard you try to fix it, it is still a mistake. Everything is wrong. There was also the scene with the fire dragon master in the Dragon Palace cave. He asked again and again until he came up with an answer that I had been wrestling with for a long time. Can you be at peace if you know right and wrong? Year after year, how does it feel to guard the Great Wall of Sword Qi alone, unable to see what tomorrow will bring? Xing Juzhong said from his heart, "When I was in the wilderness, I did some deductions on the Earth Mirror chapter. I can only gain some experience. It is more than enough to deal with the ordinary ascension realm. With this method, it does not consume energy and does not damage the power. I only need 100 years of effort to kill someone invisible, but it is foolish to target a person in the 14th realm in a short time, especially if the other person is a person who has been familiar with the world for a long time, so he needs to be hidden by you. This private piece of earth mirror. After all, Lu Shen is Lu Shen, and Clay Bodhisattva still has a third of his anger. It's obviously a calamity, why bother talking about borrowing books? When it comes to one's own Taoist roots, Jing Zhezhong's so-called borrowing of books is no different from checking the Taoist mind. With Jing's mind, I believe that as long as he reads the book, he will be more like the real Lu Shen than himself. Jing Zhezhong smiled and said, "At least it sounds better, doesn't it?" Lu Shen was speechless, his thoughts changing rapidly. Jing Zhezhong said, "It's not a business, how can I get any reward? Just to show you, you want me to swear an oath that I will not hinder your union in the future, so that you can feel better? I'm too lazy to do that. As for asking me to, I promise that I will take care of the Zhongtu Lu family once or twice in the future and do the work of rescuing people in need, so there is no need to talk about it." Lu Shen stretched out his finger and pointed at the sky. Mr. Zhang is still in the 14th realm after all. Can he really do whatever he wants now? Lu Shen saw with his own eyes that the family thief Jing Zhezhong was harmed by Qi Yu and provoked the wrath of the high-ranking gods in ancient times. The sky suddenly collapsed, a sword light appeared, and fire rain fell. The heaven and earth were shattered, and the great road was cut off. At this point, Jing Zhezhong will be followed by the heavens discussed like a shadow, and he will go to your 15th realm. In the end, the young man was stunned and silent for a long time. He didn't know what to think. He raised an arm that was turning into dust, as if to wipe off the paint on his face. Ever since he was sensible, he didn't like to be a Taoist priest who attracted much attention. He was extremely tired of the red tape of offering sacrifices to heaven and earth. In the next life there will be no next life. Lu Shen stood there with a calm expression, raised his palm, gently waved the dust, and said with a smile that Jing Zhezhong is a real devil. Call Zhou Zi a bitch. At this moment, a harsh voice came from behind. As you expected, Lu Shen is indeed willing to die. The second, more hateful voice sounded, so I have a high opinion of Lu Shen. In an instant, the heaven, earth and carefulness were all returned to their original owners. Lu Shen sat there blankly. Is it really that there is a world of difference between one realm and the other? Lu Shi smiled and said, "It is not easy for Mr. Zheng to achieve this step. It is quite laborious." The distraught head of the Lu family soon regained his composure. Jing Zhezhong looked at Lu Shi and suggested, "Would you like to go up the mountain and take a stroll?" Lu Xian seemed to be hesitant, but Chen Lingjun was so hospitable that he hurriedly said, "I'm already here. If it's just these few steps, yes or no?" Lu Shi thought for a moment, nodded and said with a smile, "Okay." Once he stood up and left the table and stepped across the mountain gate archway. This was the first time in 10,000 years that Lu Shi had truly set foot in Zongzitu Immortal Mansion. Before walking past the archway, Jing Zhezhong asked, "Have you thought about it?" Lu Shen said sadly, "Is there any choice?" Jing Zhezhong said, "Yes, I will die once." Lu Shen was about to lose his Taoist heart again and started to curse Jing Zhezhong. Jing Zhezhong said, "If you hadn't found that family elder in private and wanted to do the fortune-telling for him, I would have shown up early today and went to Tianda Peak to borrow books from you. Back then, I discussed with Cui Han regarding Hedao. There are several alternative possibilities, such as refining the moon into a dressing mirror and collecting all the shadows in the world. Otherwise, do you think Baidi City Lioli Pavilion refines and sells a large number of dressing mirrors just to make some money?" He felt that these paths were still not good enough. After all, they were a little bit heretical. After reaching the 14th realm, they were easily useless and turned into constraints. He suggested that one of the paths was to combine the most promising paths with the Lu family in China. The god of the land was given to Zhou to occupy the magpie's nest, which is what you mentioned as the Jie Dao. I felt that this move was not a sure thing at the time, but Cui Han said that he could let you leave the family and the Middle-earth divine continent on your own initiative. Lu Shan heard that his scalp was in trouble, and he gritted his teeth and said, "If you don't consider whether this is an overstep, will the Chinese Temple of Civilization pursue it?" Lu Shan suddenly said, "Yes, you are indeed a mirror seller, and you are the founder of the Joxian lineage." Note 1, Chapter 673 Needlework, mirror sellers, who are considered evil, have appeared in ancient times, but the equally hidden lineage of Joxian began to appear in the world about 3,000 years ago. Jing Juzhong said, "What a sure enough." Lu Shan sighed, "It is indeed the devil's way." On the road, a woman walked down the mountain on piles. Qin Yuanji hesitated for a moment, then stopped and stood aside without saying hello to them. When they continued to climb higher, Qin Yuanji continued to practice boxing. During this period, Jing Juzhong glanced at her. Just now, Qin Yuanji also glanced at the very eye-catching middle-aged man in a snow-white robe. She was a little uneasy and shook her head. She always felt weird. She suppressed some ripples in her mind, but she couldn't help but turn her head and look. That back view. Higher up, Zhonglu Changming appeared on the Shinto, carrying a white-haired boy with a drooped head, walking down the stairs towards the mountain gate and walking towards Jing Juzhong and his party. Changming reminded him softly in his heart, "Hong Ho, follow quickly and don't neglect those two distinguished guests." The white-haired boy complained, "Didn't I already report to Xiao Mili to take leave? Anyway, it is a great courtesy to have the master of the house to entertain the guests in person. It is not necessary for the music editor to show up." Chongqing hesitated for a moment and said, "I'll explain it to you later." Previously, Wu Shuang, the palace maiden, visited the mountain and found her privately. In addition to her registration number, she also said that if Jing Juzhong stopped at the mountain gate, she and Kong Ho would not have to show up. If Jing Juzhong climbed the mountain, she would bring the Kong Ho to meet him. As for why they met and what to do when they met, Wu Shuangjiang didn't give any reminder, not even the slightest hint. Lu Xian and the supervisor nodded in greeting, then looked at the white-haired boy and asked seemingly casually, "My friend, who is your family name?" Chen Lingjun hummed and began to show off to his nephew, "It's good to be true. If you like being true, it's good. It's easy to get ahead." Lu Shan knew the importance of this question and answer. He glanced at the boy in green and was not sure for a moment. Is this guy really stupid? The white-haired boy followed his heart and admitted to his face that he was a member of the Howren family. Then when Lu Shi nodded again, he acknowledged the matter. "So if you want to deny that fellow Daoist Kong Ho belongs to Howren, there are only two possibilities. Yu Do is in charge of Bai Yujing, or Run Yifeng is so hardworking that he does not hesitate to cross the world in person to find Howren and Lu Shi, and confront him face to face. Saying that the white-haired boy is a Qingming monk, and they may not be able to succeed, at most it will become a confusing lawsuit. To put it simply, in one sentence, from now on, Bai Yujing will no longer be able to use the nature of the palace maid to challenge Luo Luoshan and make more fuss. Lu Fang knew Jing Zhezhong's intentions, so it didn't matter. The general situation of the world had already been revealed, how could he stay out of it? Just like the predecessor of the woman practicing boxing, the monks can still use various methods to avoid disasters, but Lu Shi and their physical bodies are the largest gen hexagram in the world. Lu Shen has been staring at the Luola mountain that seems to be very close at Tiandu Peak these years. Of course, he is no stranger to Qin Yuanji. A person who has attained the Tao lives in a secluded mountain. When he enters Samadhi, his mind is connected to the heaven and earth. He can see fireflies flickering like the sun and moon at night, and hear mosquitoes flapping their wings like thunder. The old temple master followed Dao Zhu to visit a small town last time. After they separated, they went hiking alone. During this period, they met Zhu Lian and Xin Yuanji, who was walking on the mountain road and practicing boxing. At that time, the old temple master also took the initiative to ask the female martial artist. Zhu Lian said that Xin Yuanji was his unnamed disciple. The old temple master was a wise man, and he could see at a glance that Xin Yuanji's method of moving flowers and marrying trees was his. However, at the time, he thought it was Lu Chen's consistent behavior. The viewer was too lazy to study the household affairs of other families in Shantao, so he did not deduce any further context. Note 2, Chapter 851, Mud Bottle Alley. Going back and forth in the mountains, the beautiful figures are like a tapestry. Lu Shen asked in his heart, is she the reincarnation of that part? Jing Juzhong neither admitted nor denied it. Back then, the great Ascension Realm monster in the Middle-earth Divine Continent was killed by Bai Ye's sword. It was a kind of soldier who had no choice but to take the initiative to escape from the calamity. Bai Yi and that fairy sword are naturally the best way to deal with the whole world. When Jing Juzhong found it, the only request it made was that Bai Yi must hand over the sword. This is not because it deliberately opens its mouth and is whimsical. Rather, its true form and state determine that it has to make this request. Otherwise, a military solution will lose the meaning of escape. Jing Juzhong said there was no problem, just let it wait. It actually doesn't think Jing Juzhong can promote this matter. Even if you are Jing Juzhong, you are still in the Ascension realm. How can you please the most proud person in the world who even ignores the sages of the Confucian temple? But Xin Yuanji is just a fairy or inn. Of course you have to pay to stay in an inn, which is why Xin Yuanji has many opportunities besides practicing boxing. The guests had all climbed the mountain and cleared the table together. Xian Wei took out a Taoist book from his sleeve, read it for a moment, raised his head and asked in confusion, "What about millet grains?" I saw the little girl in black standing under the archway, facing the mountain shrine, standing upright, holding a gold pole in one hand and a green bamboo stick in the other, each poking at the ground. She just watched them gradually climb up, and did not look back for a long time. Xiaomi Li said softly, watching them climb the mountain. Until Mr. Zhang and the others met with the director, Changming, and the music compiler, they chatted and turned into a mountain trail together. They must have gone to the elm forest to enjoy the scenery. Xiaomi Li then sat back on the bamboo chair, placed the pole and bamboo stick across his knees, and, bored, rolled the hiking stick with the palms of his hands and explained, "Since there is not much money in the pocket, etiquette depends on your heart. The meaning in my heart is where others can't see it." Xian Wei remembered something. The tall old Taoist priest from before asked Xiaomi Li seriously, "How many days does it take?" just because Xiaomi Li said he hadn't been here for a long time. But no normal person would be able to ask such a question. Fortunately, Xiaomi Li responded and reported the exact number. Xian Wei held the title of Taoist priest and had been wandering around the world for many years. He was forced to make a living and was a good observer of people's emotions. It was obvious that the mountain owner was very nervous at that time. Xiaomi Li moved the bamboo chair towards Xian Wei and lowered his voice and said, "I heard from Jingqing that you have a very strange sign tube. The sign is very rare and unique. Can you tell me?" Xian Wei said with a shy face, "I have been eating dust for a long time. If you are interested, just play with it yourself. There is nothing rare, it is just that there are a total of 107 bamboo sticks in the bamboo stick, of which 72 bamboo sticks correspond to 2. There are also the 72 solar terms, the sun, the moon, the 8 trigrams, the 10 heavenly stems, and the 12 earthly branches. It's really 107 signatures." Xiaomi Li counted while listening. She soon frowned and asked curiously, why don't you round up the whole number, 108 lots? The Xianwei laughed and said, maybe the sign grew its own legs and escaped secretly. Xiaomili thought for a while, her brows stretched, and she burst into laughter. Riddles were her specialty, it's easy to guess. I know the answer. Xing Dafeng, who had never shown his face, just stood at the door of the house and said, can you guess this? I have been thinking hard for a long time. Xiaomili grinned and said, suppose Taoist Master Xianwei sets up a fortune-telling stall, and whoever sits down to draw lots will get the fortune. Xing Dafeng was doubtful and turned to look at Xianwei. Xianwei nodded and said, it is indeed the right answer. Xing Dafeng rubbed his chin, it's chewy. Xianwei and Xiaomili raised their hands in tacit agreement and gave them a high five. Xing Dafeng asked, is there any business for such a unique lottery solution? Are there many repeat customers? This question was a bit inappropriate. Xianwei said angrily, Brother Dafeng, what do you think? Xing Dafeng saw Cin Yuanji, smiled and waved, Miss Cin, you are in the mountains again today. Cin Yuanji was confused after hearing this, so he ignored his search for words and continued walking until he reached the foot of the mountain and climbed the mountain again. Xing Dafeng said to himself, don't wait for that little brat like Li Huai. Rely on your own efforts and have enough food and clothing. He strode toward the town. He just stopped suddenly and turned to look at the young Taoist priest. Seeing that he did not go to Fuyaolu, Xianwei asked curiously, Brother Dafeng wants to go to the county seat. Xing Dafeng nodded and said, go to Yang's pharmacy and bring back some items. Although Xianwei was confused, he didn't ask any more questions. Xing Dafeng said, don't be stunned. You should follow and lend a hand. I can't move it alone. Xianwei timidly said, Pindao is just cheating money at most, not a thief. Xing Dafeng smiled and said, don't talk nonsense. Xianwei had no choice but to follow and asked Xiaomili to help guard the door. Xiaomi was secretly happy, oh haha, I guessed it all. Xing Dafeng took Xianwei on foot out of the western mountains, chatting along the way. In the early years, the people in the small town were accustomed to working at sunrise and resting at sunset. As if they were dreaming during the day, they saw a group of unheard-of gods and immortals. They soared in the clouds, rode in the mist, and controlled the wind and blue sky. After that, it became commonplace to travel far away from home and become a business owner again and again. Every time I return home, there are harvests, big and small, just like swallows picking up mud and ants moving, replenishing the household income bit by bit. Accompanying Li Baoping, Li Huai, and the others to Sui Cliff Academy, they brought back Chen Lingjun and Wan Shu on their way back home. During the process, they also captured a golden cushion carp. Going from the Jianqi Great Wall to Tonggishao, I accidentally entered the lotus flower blessed land, and there were Pei Qian and 4 people in the picture scroll beside me, as well as a little lotus figure with a broken arm. Later, while traveling to Luzhou, Beiju, there stood a little girl in black who liked to spend money to crack chestnuts in a basket on her back. Going to the Great Wall of Sword Qi again, Mi Yuha chose Luopa Mountain for his long life. When Chen Pingon finally returned to Haoran, he brought back 8 sword cultivators including Bai Xian in one go. The sword cuts through the barbaric wilderness, the bright moon migrates, and a loyal dead soldier named Xiaomoi emerges. In the capital city of Dali, I met the Taoist priest Xianwei who pretended to be a ghost. I went to the capital of Yushuan Kingdom and found Ning Ji, who even Lu Chen thought was a hot potato. Wudong Mountain recognized Deng Jianping as his apprentice. Not to mention Yu Shiwu and Xiao Xing who were thrown away by Chen Pingon to work long-term jobs in Xinjiang Tiandi. In Qidun Mountain, sitting on the ground and sharing the spoils, initiated by Liang and co-acted by Wei Tutu, Chen Pingon made the last choice and chose the pale golden lotus seed. Chen Pingan created a small pond behind the bamboo building. They are all waiting patiently for the germination and flowering of the seed in the lotus pond. When Tong Yezhou said goodbye that year, his friend Lu Tai lied to Chen Pingan, saying that he had picked up a bag of elm seeds at Shaodian Street in Fuji Zone. Lu Tai gave it to Chen Pingan and asked him to return to his hometown and plant it in a sunny place on the mountain. Chen Pingan was ignorant, but Wei Bo was an expert. He could see at a glance that it was the seed of the ancestral elm tree in the divine continent of Middle-earth. No matter what, many years later, in the Luoluo mountain, there was a forest of elm trees, lush and green. From Wuyi in Ziyang Prefecture, Luopa Mountain got a fairy plum core. After planting it, it was carefully cultivated by Nguan Shu. It was really miraculous. Just like the rumors, it grew into a solar tree that looked like a 1,000-year-old tree in 1 year. Plum, every 24th solar term, there will be spiritual energy overflowing. No matter how polite Lu Chongrun and the others were over at Luola Mountain's home-brewed bayberry wine, they would take the initiative to ask for it. Shadow of all those who practice Taoism. Chen Pingan once said to Yuan Huajing, who met by chance in the Luzong Temple dojo, "It doesn't matter, there is no shadow under the sun." They traveled together in Fuyao Island. Since the girl in the mink hat mentioned the yin-yang fish for the first time, Chen Pingan also asked Xiego, "Have you ever seen the shadow of a shadow?" Entering the shop, there was only one clerk, Shirling Shan. When he saw that it was his uncle Jing Dafeng, he ignored the young Taoist priest. When they got to the backyard, Jing Dafeng went to the woodshed and asked Xianwei to sit wherever he wanted. When Xianwei saw a bench, he moved to sit on it and waited for Brother Dafeng. The Taoist priest put his hands on his sleeves, and the old was there. He looked across the patio in the courtyard and towards the main room with the door closed. "It's a bit sad that it's not easy for my mountain owner to get to where he is today." In Luola Mountain, those who arrived earlier than him seemed to be the only ones who didn't like to talk about the mountain master's childhood. But Xianwei still has some hearing and understanding. In fact, just as he walked towards the drugstore, Xianwei had a hard time imagining how a child must have felt when he went to the drugstore again and again to grab medicine. The immortal captain held his sleeves up and looked up at the sky. The 24 solar terms in the human world are like the formation of troops on the battlefield. When you are young and strong, you must dare to strive for fame and career. The heat of wealth is like a mild summer to a severe summer. You must also consider not to spend your later life with light snow or heavy snow. Therefore, we must know that the best principle is to live a small life, and avoid being perfect. This requires a person to think about the summer solstice, when the days are longest, to the winter solstice, when the nights are long. We should also think about the approaching beginning of spring in the coming year during those difficult and unbearable cold seasons. When you conduct yourself in the world, you should have a clear conscience. In good times, the heat will be like frost, and in times of adversity, the cold dew will be like the vernal equinox. There is an order to things. A young man should first make up his mind and be willing to make the first-class ambitions. The beginning of spring, the beginning of summer, the beginning of autumn and the beginning of winter. Spring also begins summer, autumn begins, and winter also begins to set ambitions. The Xianwei felt something and murmured something sincerely. Over at the woodshed, Jing Dafeng asked with a smile, "Xianwei, what are you thinking about while looking at the wind?" Xianwei's heart tightened, looking for the wind. "What, not moving? Really a thief?" Jing Dafeng changed the subject, poked his head out from the woodshed and raised his chin. "This bench has been around for some years, and many important people have sat on it." Xianwei quickly stood up and wiped the chair with his sleeves while complaining, "I didn't tell you earlier." Jing Dafeng smiled and said, "I haven't even sat on it." Xianwei glanced at the bench. "It must be worth a lot of money." Chongqing, who was one of the ancestors of gold and copper coins in the world, chose Luopa Mountain as the foothold of Haoran world. At that time, the war in Old Longqing was tense, and Chongqing wanted to do her little bit to see if the shop needed gold and copper coins, so she, who had some connections with Shinto, took the initiative to visit the old man at Yang's pharmacy and paid a respectful visit. Although old man Yang had a kind attitude and gave a kind-hearted reply, Chongqing still did not sit down on the bench. The saints who have been in charge of the three religions in one family in the past generations can do this, but they never dare to live long. To a certain extent, they are all officials of the previous dynasty. Changshi's meeting with one of the 12 high-ranking officials holding the ascension platform is similar to the meeting of a subordinate official in the imperial court with the 3 nobles and 9 ministers. Before old man Yang left the shop, he had a rare smile and said, "What a great opening chapter." Note 3, Chapter 716, Jiaxing disappoints, it doesn't matter whether it's a hexagram or a sign. The young Taoist priest's soliloquy is the answer. The real solution to the opening chapter of the small town is that Tian Xingjian, a gentleman, constantly strives for self-improvement. Sword of Coming Chapter 1173. Chapter 1173 Qin Qingda's swordsmanship is average, reading the military book can escape the summer heat, and the 100 orifices can be cool, and reading a good poem can also ward off the cold, and the whole body will be comfortable. At this time, the 3 of us must have a bowl of lotus root starch. Cui Dongshan smiled and took out 2 bowls of iced lotus root starch from his sleeves and handed them to Jiang Shangjin and Feng Xuetao. Feng Xuetao thanked him, feeling that he could never keep up with sect master Cus thoughts. Cui Dongshan asked if he wanted a spoon, but Jiang Shangjin said no, holding the bowl with one hand and eating lotus root starch with his head up. Cui Dongshan made 2 more bowls, one for each hand, one for the left and the other for the right. One soaring 2 immortals is such a fairy spirit. On the other side of the fish scale crossing the bank, some fairies who came here admiringly did not see Miyu, but found the young man in white clothes swaying, which was a surprise. While waving to them, Cui Dongshan chatted with Jiang Shangjin about the current situation. On the mountain, you can't provoke anyone who provokes these fairy sisters who like algae. The Qingping sword sect has already joined the new emperor of the Yuan dynasty of the Deyuan dynasty. The Yuan dynasty, which was originally divided into 3, has finally returned to unity. Yuaning ascended the throne and proclaimed himself emperor. The Qingping sword sect and the Deyuan dynasty are close neighbors. The new emperor of the Yuan family promises that in the future, not only the sword cultivator embryos who can meet their luck, but also the children who are suitable for Taoism will be sent to Xianda Mountain first. As long as Qingping sword is willing to accept it, they will automatically become outer disciples. As for whether they can stay or not, it depends on their own good fortune. In addition to Kuqin, barnyard officer, there is also the female cultivator Wang Manmeng, nicknamed Qian Ho or Qian Jun, and now they have all become outer disciples of Qingping sword sect. One worked in the brewing bureau and served as the deputy to Lao Chiu Du, while Qian Ho took a job at the Huaiwa bureau, which was regarded as helping me Daijiangxian. In addition, on the other side of the Rind River, there will also be several active-minded subordinate officials of the Hebashuifu, who will enter the Xianda Mountain realm, and will not be included in the genealogy for the time being. If Luopeishan is said to have many vassal hilltops, few genealogical members, and few institutions, evenly spread out, there are several people on one hilltop. Then Qingping Jianzong has more official offices than the officials. On average, it is almost 1 office per person. What's more, Jiang Shangjin could see at a glance that such big divisions as the Department of Merit and Demerit and the Department of Operation would soon spawn a series of subordinate offices. No wonder Cui Dongshan is so anxious to recruit troops and horses. Luopao Mountain can have no matter how many people there are, but Shizong can't. It's just this kind of family chores, Jiang Shangzhen, the chief of the previous sect, will not interfere, so as not to have less chairs in the Jiasfang Patriarch Hall in the future, not to mention that he has to pay attention to a brother who clearly settles accounts. Jiang Shangzhen teased, "Isn't it just not picking?" Cui Dongshan said with a smile, "Screening, you must first be screened before you can choose, otherwise it will be difficult for a clever woman to cook without rice." Jiang Shangzhen asked, "Do you want to use a ready-made example to teach your husband how to manage a sect?" Cui Dongshan said angrily, "How dare I have such a rebellious idea, Chief Shou is going to spit blood." Jiang Shangzhen smiled and said, "I really envy you. You can start all over again and make a comeback." Many teenagers are full of vigor and ambition, and they are reduced to bagasse all over the place after being chewed by the world. With Jiang Shangzhen's realm and means, even if he does not talk about the identity of the cultivator of the Yugui genealogy and the head of the Jiang family, it is not impossible for him to change his place, change his face, and establish a sect. It's just that my heart doesn't allow it, I'm really too lazy to toss. It's like a road, if you walk it again, it's safe to walk, but the scenery along the way is too similar. Feng Shuetao was a little envious of the relationship between Jiang Shangzhen and Cui Dongshan. On the mountain, it is not easy to find such like-minded friends who not only share weal and woe, but also work together for a long time. Feng Shuetao, whose name is Qingmi, was born in Yizhou, and his hometown is in Aizhou. He has known Lu Kaishan and Wei Shi for a long time, but they did not get along. Cui Dongshan said, "Yang Ji is now in the capital." She changed her identity, changed her name to Jingxing, and became the worship of the Daquan dynasty. Jiang Shangzhen said with a smile, "The capital of Yunyan Kingdom is not the night boat that took Brother Feng and Miyu on board." Cui Dongshan shook his head and said, "She and Nin Daoist will do their best to help migrate waterways and mountains and peaks." Jiang Shangzhen laughed and said, "It's all cultivation, it's always like this, knowing that there are tigers in the mountains, I tend to go to the tiger mountains." Cui Dongshan raised his head and ate the iced lotus root starch and sipped, "There are several good dreams in the basket of cherries in Tsing Yi." Jiang Shangzhen said, "Is there anything else that needs my intervention here? If not, I will go straight to Luopa Mountain. If I don't go, I will worry about the chief's seat. That Mr. Mo is a formidable enemy. With Xiao Mo in Luopao Mountain, it's not price gouging." This made Jiang Shang really worried. Cui Dongshan said, Go, it will be too late if you don't go." Jiang Shangzhen nodded and said, "It just so happens that the abbot of the Confucian Temple, the 5 sacred mountains, was sealed, and I can show off my skills." Cui Dongshan clicked his tongue and said, "The fairy sisters seem to be whispering, are you the old sect master Jiang?" After Jiang Shangzhen finished eating lotus root starch, he began to lick the bowl, with the bowl facing down and his face up. Just such a disgusting action made the fairies in the fairy port be sure that this person was definitely not Jiang Shangzhen. Cui Dongshan smirked and said, "Do you think Anai Yuanzhang will take the initiative to find Sui right?" Jiang Shangzhen nodded and said, "This Lu Xing will probably go to the Exile Peak Sweeping Flower Terrace." Cui Dongshan asked, "What does the old Guanju think? Since Lu Xing has already been invited out of the Taoist temple, wouldn't it be good for Owafuti to add a sword repairer similar to the criminal officer Haosu? Yuan Hairpin, suppress his practice." Jiang Shangzhen said, "Old Guanju is notoriously eccentric. He probably doesn't think that an ascension cultivator is a stalk. What is more important is those fellow Taoists who have the hope of finding a new path by themselves." Cui Dongshan nodded and said, "Old Guanju likes new things, and really hates the old-fashioned knowledge of exegesis elementary schools. Xiao Mo, because he was with Qin Pingon. Jinxiu Baijing is because there is Xiaomo in Luopao Mountain. Wild Tao Ting, because there is a moody old blind man, will become a noble and tender Taoist. Standing up is the body of guilt, because there are Confucian temple rules. To be precise, there is that little master. Otherwise, these unruly wild monsters, just speaking of fierceness, are not comparable to Qingtong, who are really a plain tree. Although Cui Dongshan had 2 bowls of lotus root starch, he was the first to finish it. When Jiang Shangzhen finished eating, Feng Shuetao still had half a bowl of lotus root starch left. Cui Dongshan laughed for no reason and said, "A gentleman speaks his mind, and a villain attacks his heart. Do I consider myself to be wise and dangerous, and to make a name for myself? Then Brother Feng is reclusive and firm, cynical." Jiang Shangzhen said with a smile, "I belong to memorizing ugliness and blogging, and I will follow what is wrong." Cui Dongshan said, "Fortunately, we don't like to argue with hypocrisy." "That's it, what can I do?" Cui Dongshan waited until Feng Shuetao finished eating lotus root starch, took back the empty bowl and put it in his sleeve, and said, "I'm busy with business, you can do whatever you want." In fact, he and Gao Kuei, who inherited swordsmanship and belonged to the Dragon King's lineage, were very close friends. They often stationed at the head of the city together. It's no exaggeration to die brothers. Gao Kuei has a master's biography, but it is a pity that there is no better than nothing. Xing Yun was born at the bottom of the market and grew up step by step. If you have an account book, don't think about defaulting on your account, in fact it's just talking about it. In his hometown, having a sword cultivator status is nothing. Killing demons and accumulating military exploits is nothing, they are all normal things. Come and go. In the past, the large and small restaurants on the Great Wall of Sword Chi, which account room did not leave a lot of confused accounts that were owed and not repaid. It seems that there is only the small wine shop later. The 6 relatives do not recognize it, and they insist that they will not take credit. Lu Shui has a mentor in her hometown. There are a lot of sword cultivators. She is quite beautiful in the Great Wall of Sword Chi. She still remembers that when she left her hometown, the youngest sword cultivator was an orphan, who seemed to be called Han Rong. The child's aptitude for practicing swordsmanship is average, but his temper is quite stubborn. Every time he smells the smell of alcohol on the elders of the division, even if it is an old swordsman of the master's generation, the child will have a dark face. It seems that as long as other people drink, they are enmity with their children. That's why Lu Shui had a little impression of this child. Before Lu Shui asked Miyu a lot of questions, one of them asked Miyu if he knew about a sword repairer named Han Rong, who was in Ascension City now. It's just that Miyu is a door in Chunfan Zhai and Summer Palace in Upside Down Mountain. He only knows the archives of Shang Wujing and some Earth Immortal sword cultivators, so Miyu doesn't know if Han Rong followed him to Wucai Tianxia Feishing City. In fact, Miyu knew that Lu Shui just wanted to ask if Han Rong was alive. So Miyu said that Lord Ingguan must know about this matter, and he could help Fei Jin send a letter to Jiaisfeng to ask, but Lu Shui said it was unnecessary. Miyu has his own plans, so I still have to ask. If Han Rong is already dead in the battle with the reply from Lord Ingguan, Miyu will just pretend he doesn't know about it, but if he is still alive, he will tell Lu Shui. Xing Yun opened a pot of wine on the table, looked at Lu Shui, the old woman nodded. Xing Yun arrived at 2 bowls of wine, and heard from Miyu that it was the most famous and best-selling drink on the Great Wall of Sword Chi. There are 3 grades of this kind of wine in the shop. The weakest one costs only 1 snow, and the other one sells 5 snows for money. The most expensive one is 10. It is also called Qingshan Divine Wine. A pot is sold on a first-come, first-served basis. Xing Yun laughed instead of being angry, a little. In the Dragon Gate realm, his realm is not high, and his tone is not small. Miyu turned around and left. Lu Shui suddenly pointed to a pot of wine on the table and asked, I didn't write my name, what's it called? Miyu stopped and turned his head, glanced at the jug, and said with a smile, it's a kind of local shochu called Yaba Lake wine. Miyu went straight away, and the door closed on its own. After a long silence in the room, Lu Shui lifted the mud seal of the jug of wine, shook it, lowered his head and sniffed again. Good name. Xingyun twitched the wine bowl with 2 fingers, and then tapped the table lightly, signaling to pour the wine. At the wine table, the sword fairy is to the wine, and the old woman is to the young man. The people's state of mind is absolutely clear. I have been away from home for thousands of years, but my heart is still young. A group of people rushed to Yulindu, Zhongkue, and Ghost Yujin. Li Baoping, Xing Yugan, talking about Yingzhou, this trip together, went to many places, and visited a small half of Tonggisao. They were not in a hurry to board the Tongyin ferry. Under Eugene's suggestion, they first found a restaurant near the ferry port to eat fresh and pickled Don River. Zhongkue really couldn't eat this, so he ordered another portion from Li Baoping. Hot pot. Zhongkue had an oil paper umbrella in his hand, which he had previously picked up at the foot of a mountain. Nowadays, Yulindu does not worry about paying customers. Every day, more people come to the capital of Yunyan Kingdom than go. The restaurant business is good, and the shop assistant is not a diligent person. With one mouth, the fat man said angrily, the eyes are on the buttocks, and they only recognize the clothes and not the person. Back then, this kind of thing was not a good thing for a jester, and he was dragged out and beheaded twice. Zheng Yu dryly said, Senior Gusu, calm down. They all said that the Prime Minister can hold a boat in his stomach, let alone a former emperor. Tan Ningzhou actually always wondered that this fat man who always likes to use the word widow on his lips seems to be a rather elegant character besides being ugly. Walking along the way, reciting poems and writing opposites, copying ancient monuments, knocking iced tea, simmering taro, and chewing plum blossoms with shui. A fat man who is clearly called Eugene but calls himself Suzhou, and is good at everything. The boy in white threw his sleeves, swaggered into the restaurant, and slapped the fat man on the back of the head. When I saw Cui Dongshan, Li Baoping and Jing Yuqian, who were also from the same line of Wenxing, had different names. Jing Yuqian called a little brother, but Li Baoping called a big brother. If someone else called Cui Dongshan like this, Cui Dongshan would have been unhappy for a long time. If you have to say a word, you are the senior brother, and your whole family is the senior brother. But since Li Baoping shouted like that, Cui Dongshan endured it. Li Baoping said, Little master set a date, let us all go to Luopa mountain. Cui Dongshan looked blank, Sir didn't tell me about this. Li Baoping smiled and said, It's not surprising, you are the proud disciple of the little uncle. Cui Dongshan smiled dryly, yes. On the Tongyin ferry, after reminiscing about the old, with Qingtong, Nandaoist and Qingtong came to the bow together to enjoy the prosperous night scene of Yolinda's lights. In fact, they didn't have much friendship before, just like Qingtong said, Nandaoist belongs to the younger generation on his side and Yang Ji's side. Yang Ji was fine. He stayed in the wilderness 10,000 years ago, and he and Tao Ting, the ancestor who drove the mountain dog, often had an intersection, but Qingtong was assigned to Tongye continent. Daoist Nen sighed with emotion for no reason, after all, it's different from the wild, I won't say no. Qingtong remembered something, Daoist friend really chased down Dong Sanging. Daoist Nengsu said with a smile, the hero doesn't mention the bravery of the past. Any pursuit is just a misunderstanding. If you don't fight, you don't know each other. It's just a matter of sympathy. In fact, the truth is that Dong Sangeng was in the wild hinterland back then. He slashed an Ascension Realm demon empress, cut off the opponent's head, put it in a bamboo basket and brought it back to the Great Wall of Sword Chi. Dong Sanging was seriously injured not long after he got out of a siege. On the way back home, Tao Ting saw an opportunity and wanted to go up and take a bite. After all, the old blind man doesn't care. In addition, Dong Sanging, who was carrying a bamboo basket on the road at that time, had to hide his breath, and Tao Ting vaguely remembered that young swordsman. When he went to the wild hinterland, he seemed to be just an ant-like Jin Dan swordsman. After 100 years, the realm can be where to go. Do you want to take a bite and eat a nascent soul? Tao Ting didn't know if he could plug his teeth. At that time, Dong San was even in a hurry, and was too lazy to entangle with Tao Ting too much, so Tao Ting shook his arms a little with prestige. When Tao Ting was about to use a few trump cards, the old blind man reminded him that the young man is a swordsman of the Ascension realm. You don't recognize him, Dong Sanging, but the head in the bamboo basket, you must know each other. Want to get a bunch of buddies? Tao Ting was so frightened that he apologized to the young Jianshou surnamed Dong on the spot. Thinking of thanking the old blind man sincerely, it is rare to be kind and reminding me about this. As a result, I saw a neighbor standing beside the old blind man who rarely visited Shirwanda Mountain, Chen Qingdu. After Chen Qingdu put his hands down at that time, he just said with a smile, Tao Ting Road is friendly and powerful. The old blind man told Tao Ting to roll away, don't get in the way. If Tao Ting was granted amnesty, he hurried away. The old blind man said, if you don't kill that monster sword cultivator, Dong Sanging won't have to hurt the root of the Tao, and his future kendo achievements will definitely not be low. When Dong Sanging is in the 14th realm, you can relax a little. Separated. The implication is that it is a pity to help the family make a name for the so-called city head lettering. This transaction of Dong Sanging is not worth it. Chen Qingdu smiled and asked, if you don't kill that beast, is Dong Sanging still Dong Sanging? The old blind man was silent for a long time, and then he said, thanks to swordsmen who need to be pure. Chen Qingdu smiled and said, so you are destined to not be a sword cultivator. The old blind man asked a doubt in his heart that he had accumulated for many years, that guy, what's going on? Some people who can be killed, but they don't kill them. There is absolutely no need to ask about the sword like the master of Bixiao, but he takes the initiative. Run to Luobaodan to provoke. It was a strange sword cultivator who couldn't even see his face clearly. Chen Qingdu said casually, I like to hide the head and hide the tail, and a gourd. This guy was so arrogant back then, and he didn't seem to like anyone. Long Jun and Yuan Xiang, who sincerely asked him about swordsmanship, he was always there. I didn't care. I asked Guan Zhan if he could see his Tao roots and swordsmanship veins, and he smiled and didn't say anything. I remember meeting me once, do you know what this guy did? The old blind man asked curiously, how? Chen Qingdu smiled and said, when passing by, this guy deliberately slowed down, glanced at me, and then patted his shoulder. The old blind man became more and more puzzled, is there a deep meaning? Chen Qingdu angrily said with a smile, I thought about it at first, but the result was that I was the first to guess the other person's mind. There is a far deep meaning. You probably told me that your swordsmanship, Chen Qingdu, only reaches my shoulders. Sighed. Back then, the old blind man rarely had a smile. Miyu sat on a railing of the Tongyin ferry, so that there would be no movement at the fish-scale ferry, and seeing him was like seeing a ghost, so he deliberately chose a secluded place. Miyu took off the haoyang sword-raising gourd that was usually used as a wine jug from his waist, and it contained several kilograms of Duba Lake wine. Jianshou Xingyun, who was already here, was running water. In addition, there are Gao Shuang, Zhusu, Jinzi, Guidu, Huangling, Xianyang, Meikan. The Mishua peak of Qingping sword sect has a flat stone wall that is as steep as a sword. In the future, Sword cultivators can engrave text on the cliff, and the content is arbitrary, according to their preferences. After thinking about it, Miyu didn't know what he could write. Duckweed gathers and disperses in a guest town, Miyu silently drinks a pot of mute wine. Green and verdant vegetation, old people year after year, day and night acacia. In Qingxing country, there are many shops in Jiwadu, bustling with people. The two groups of people gathered together by dispersing. Previously, Pei Qian couldn't resist Han Qiao's persuasion, so he chose two quirky magic tools that were slightly fat and powdery, and planned to give them to Nuanshu and Millet. Han Qiaosa looked down, and after paying the bill, she asked who Pei Qian was going to give it to. After getting the answer, the immortal woman from Baidi City simply took out two magic weapons from her sleeves, one with swords and grasses. The glazed porcelain pen holder, a jade seat in the shape of a nine-tailed fox, said that the first two were given by you, and the two were my gifts to the two little girls. Before we arrived at Luopao Mountain, the gifts came first. This it is said that the soldiers and horses should go ahead without food and forage. During this period of time, the military books were not read in vain. Chen Pingon said, "I'll have a small chat with fellow Daoist Lianchuan." Ziwu Meng glanced at Gu Kan. Gu Kan was indifferent. Ziwu Meng slandered in his heart, "Big pig's hoofs, men are unreliable." He had to walk with the young hidden officer who had the appearance of a boy with a sword on his back. After they walked a distance, Gu Kan, who stayed where he was, reminded, "Don't spy on the conversation over there." Han Qiao nodded with a smile. After all, it's Mr. Chin who can let senior brother go out and entertain guests in person. I know them well. Chen Pingon said, "Since you stay by Gu Kan's side, don't come up with bad ideas, don't get involved when things happen, and try to make big things into small things." Ziwu Meng gave 1,000 blessings. The hidden official has an order, and the effectiveness should be remembered in the heart, and I dare not forget it for a moment. Chen Pingon didn't have to guess, he knew she wouldn't take it seriously, and said, "Don't think I'm being troublesome, don't forget that Gu Kan is Mr. Zheng's direct disciple, and within this 100-year period, you will be Gu Kan's nominal maidservant, getting along day and night. The only thing to do is actually very simple, that is to protect yourself, try your best to save your own life, and don't be regarded as an abandoned child by Mr. Zheng crossing the river and demolishing the bridge in the future. The Jade Purity realm, even if it is the Ascension realm, will still be unable to eat and walk around." Ziwumeng looked astonished. "Is it appropriate for you to say that Jingzhuzhong?" Chen Pingon said to himself, "Since you didn't participate in the war that invaded Hauran, you are a new face in the wild world, so there is no old account to turn over. This is a good thing. Yesterday's things are like yesterday's death, and today's things are like today's life. How about tomorrow? The Kung Fu is only for each day in the past 100 years. Mr. Zheng is one of the best people in the world to settle accounts. You stay by Gu Kan's side and do your best to help him establish the next sect. It's not that there is no chance of blessings in disguise. The 100-year period is valid, and I believe that Mr. Zheng will not treat you badly." Ziwu Meng smiled and said, "I understand what the hidden official means, but there are actually two things. First, don't make trouble, and draw a clear line with the Ziwu Meng in the wild world, and second, don't cause trouble for Gu Kan. Under the premise of non-compliance, accumulate a little bit of credit, and in the future, I will be rewarded by City Lord Zheng." Chen Pingon said, "With me here, when the 100-year contract expires, Gu Kan will not arbitrarily find a way to kill the donkey and slaughter you. Do you understand?" Ziwu Meng said decisively, "Yes. Why can't I understand? I can. In other words, it is easier to understand." In the future, if Chen Pingon insists on killing Ziwu Meng, Gu Kan, her master, will not stop her. Chen Pingon said, "I will travel to the divine continent in the Middle Earth in a short time. I will definitely go to Baidi City. If I have the opportunity to meet Mr. Zheng, I will talk about you. Having said that, Chen Pingan rubbed his eyebrows, really having a headache. The 14th realm cultivator is the imaginary enemy, and most dare not have Jing Juzhong. It is not a joke. In the wild world, you don't have to be afraid of a Yuan Yingjing sword cultivator engraved on the front of the city. But in Howren world, you have to be more afraid of such people. This is called doing as the locals do. The truth here, I will ponder it more after I realize it, fellow Taoist. Chen Pingan turned around and said, after talking about the matter, we will go back the same way. I wish you all a smooth journey. Seeing Gu Kan and the others again, Chen Pingan smiled and said, I just got the news that Lu Xianyang may have a drink, and we will be his best man together. Gu Kan nodded with a smile, as long as Lu Xianyang has no objection, and doesn't think I will lose his share as the best man, I have no objection. Chen Pingan glared at him and said, stop saying a few bastards. Gu Kan is a little aggrieved. The three of them have the best relationship with Chen Pingan. In short, if Chen Pingan was not always the peacemaker in his hometown, if Gu Kan likes to hold revenge, then he is Lu Xianyang. Generous. Just as careful, Gu Kan and Lu Xianyang have had dozens of fights. Gu Kan seemed to ask casually, is the wine set in the town, or? Chen Pingan said, Lu Xianyang said that his hometown and Longquan sword sect will each have a show. Gu Kan nodded and didn't ask any more questions. Want me to take the initiative to ask about this? You Lu Xianyang want to eat farts. Shouldn't you be the one sending the invitation, giving a word? If you can't find me, Gu Kan, will you not send a letter to Baidi City? A letter from Feijin can cost you a few dollars, Sect Master Lu. Han Chaosa reminded, Mr. Chen, don't forget about collecting military books. Chen Pingan smiled and said, I promise to send books to Baidi City every 6 months for the next few years. The most recent one will be on the day of Guyu this year. Immortal Master Han will just wait and receive the books. Han Chao nodded and said, I can take 500 Guyu money as a deposit first, and I can give it to Mr. Chen now. Chen Pingan shook his head and said, no, friendship is friendship, and business is business. Immortal Master Han will talk about it after receiving the book. When the money and goods are finished, it will be more refreshing. This is not because I am worried that there are too many books on the art of war sent to Beidasheng for the first time, and 500 books are not enough. In addition to their own lotus root blessed land, there are also those immortal mansions with private blessings, such as Jiang Shangzhen's Cloud Cave Blessed Land, Qingtan Blessed Land where Han Zhoujin is located, and Fulu Bai Xian, etc. Chen Pingan will be in town. Send a letter asking for a military book, anyway, a copy will do. Of course, all the military books that can be collected are downhill first. As for the quality, Chen Pingan will personally check. This kind of slow-flowing business cannot break Chen Ping's golden signboard of the old man without deceitful burdens. Chen Pingan said, I will go to Beijing with Pei Qian, and you will just board the boat. Gu Kan smiled and said, that Wen Shen is currently recovering from his injuries in Qingqian Taoist Temple. Now this martial arts master is rather pitiful. It is difficult to hold his breath and concentrate. Before leaving, I suggest that he might as well give up his qi training and concentrate on martial arts. Climbing to the top, since the spirit is so high and the aptitude is so good, maybe there is a chance to find a place on Pei Qian's side. Pei Qian smiled knowingly, speaking so destructively, no wonder Gu Kan felt pleasing to the eye. Chen Pingan wondered, I was at the gate of Hehuan Mountain before, and Pei Qian's punch was not too heavy. Pei Qian nodded and said, it's not heavy. Gu Kan said in a heartfelt voice, in the wild battle, among the opponents, Jian Xiao Lu Bai didn't perform very well, but my intuition tells me that she is very dangerous. Chen Pingan nodded. After the two sides separated, Chen Pingan and Pei Qian smiled and said, "If you walk through the capital, you should go back to Luopa Mountain first. Our disciples of Wenxing will gather together in the near future." Exiled Xianfeng in Xiande Mountain, on the other side of Sweeping Flower Platform, on the right side of Sui Sui, he cleared his mind, put a Qixin sword into its sheath, and rode the wind to the imitation treasure beach at the foot of the mountain, bowing, "Disciple Sui right side, see Mr." The old man standing beside the thatched hut on the shoal bowed his hands and returned the salute. "The Jiang clan scavenger in the cloud cave blessed land, Ena Yuanzhang, has seen fellow Daoist Sui." The old boatman goes by the pseudonym Ena Yuanzhang, holds a bamboo wormwood in hand, punting a boat on the Huanggeji side, and doing a small business every day for one person and one snow to spend money to cross the river. Mr. Sui wanted to meet each other or not, but the right side of Sui didn't care about it. He just asked curiously, "Since Mr. successfully ascended, he has been staying in the blessed land of Cloud Cave to devote himself to cultivating Taoism." On Huang Heji's side, the matter of killing mosquitoes on the river, but what did Mr. This is called knowingly asking, and there is nothing to ask for. The right side of the Sui dynasty insisted on switching from pure martial arts to practicing immortal swordsmanship. Chen Pingan, the owner of the picture scroll, did not stop her. She was taken to Xinzhuan Peak by the old master Sun Yuan and became a direct disciple of the ancestor of Yugui. He once had a lot of conflicts with the then main sword Xiao Wei Ying of Jiui Peak. Regarding the Yunku Blessed Land, which is nominally owned by Yuguizong and actually controlled by Jiang's family, even if it is close at hand, the right side of Sui has never set foot there. She has heard a lot of rumors and anecdotes about the Blessed Land. A drunken sword immortal spit out sword pills, and Jiang Shang Zhan mosquito, such a beautiful talk on the mountain, has been passed down as mysterious, just because it is related to Jian Shou. The right side of Sui is particularly concerned. Later, Jiang Shangzhen disclosed all the inside information to Sui right side, and made it clear by pouring beans in the bamboo tube. Just like what Ni Yuanjin said to a young man in white, "It is better not to know if you know it." The two masters and apprentices, after many years, are in a foreign land. One is punting a boat in the blessed land of the Cloud Cave, and the other once practiced in the Xinzhuan Peak of the Jade Gui Zone. In this long-awaited reunion, Sui Right asked the question because she was worried that there was something wrong with her husband, so she chose some good words as her opening remarks. Otherwise, from the right side of Sui, with his husband's aptitude, he should have been an Ascension Realm sword immortal standing on the top of the mountain long ago, and his achievements in the Great Tao will definitely not be lost to that similar criminal officer Hao Su. Ni Yuanzhang's real name in Lotus Flower Blessed Land is Lu Sheng and the word is Shizhou. This scholar, in his hometown, is not only a teacher on the right side of Sui, but also a preacher of her martial arts and swordsmanship. At this moment, the old man in the Confucian shirt was wearing a feathered crane cloak that was both a robe and a cage, with a three-legged golden toad lying on his shoulders. Jiang Shangzhen made several bids and tried to buy Jin Chan with Ni Yuanzhang, but he failed. Ni Yuanzhang laughed at himself. "How can you talk about a successful ascension, just being thrown out of the lotus flower blessed land by the master of the Bixiao cave, no longer sitting in the well and watching the sky, never wanting to leave the well, and even feel that the world is big and small, and the Tao's heart is not pure. The matter of Tao's ascension is still far away, and it has been a long time in the air." Previously, Chen Pingan and the others traveled together to visit the blessed land of the Cloud Caves. When they were crossing the river by boat, Ni Yuanjin was seen through by a white-clothed boy who was a Shinto Taoist. To be precise, it was the two sides who each revealed the other's roots and feet, which was related to the origin of the skins they used to show people. The physique of the old man, Ni Yuanzhang, is the remains of an ancient great monk whose real body is a crane. And Cui Dongshan's youthful skin was once an old dragon of ancient Shu who could roam the galaxy. For cultivators who pursue qi refinement and longevity, a certain knot in their hearts that cannot be solved for a long time is often the place where they are concerned about doomsday. If it wasn't for Yuanzhang now at the crumbling and unbroken bottleneck of jade purity, in fact, the old man was not willing to come to Xiandu Mountain, and took the initiative to meet the proud student of the former blessed land on the right side of Sui. In addition, Yuanzhang was even more worried that the right side of Sui, who was already a swordsman in the Yuan Yingjing realm, would retreat in the future, and the demons he saw would be himself. After all, the image and status of the master Lu Xing in the heart of the student Sui right side will only be higher than the inner magic method she encounters. Then we will meet once, we will end our relationship, and we will practice our own cultivation from now on. The moonlight was like snow and the cool breeze was breezy. Walking together on Luobaotan, Lu Xing asked, "Have you ever met the old Guanju of the Taoist temple in the East China Sea, that is, the Bixiao cave owner of the ancient Taoist temple located in Luobaotan?" Sui nodded on the right and said, "I have seen it once. The old Guanju went to Luopao Mountain before traveling far away to Qingming." Before going to Aquarius Island, Lu Xing secretly walked to Jinding Temple, found Xiao Yuanran, sent a long-lost Taoist book, and then gave the bamboo wormwood to the young Jin Dan. Xiao Yuanran of Jindingwen, on the way to practice, compared to the monks in his hometown, whether it is Jiang Shangzhen, who is notorious but has successfully practiced, or Huang Ting, the female crown of Taiping Mountain who has a deep blessing, Xiao Yuanran can be said to be smooth sailing, making a fortune in a muffled voice. In fact, he didn't do anything, just lay quietly and enjoy himself. First, together with the master, he served as the worshipper of the Daquan dynasty. Later, the war that led to the sinking of one continent did not affect the Jindingwen from beginning to end. It's just that Jindingwen deliberately concealed this matter. Xiao Yuanran is like stepping on luck all the way, constantly taking advantage. Looking at it separately, it is not a big blessing, but it is better than a stable practice. Now, he is already a Yuaning cultivator. What's more, this person got an amulet that seemed to be pasted on his forehead by the old master without knowing it. The pair of master and apprentice walking on Luobaotan. Neither is easy. The so-called is not simple, not only that they have all been the number one person in the world in the lotus flower blessed land. Lu Xing, who was of Mr. Shizhou, and Brother Shizhou, by Lu Qin, was indeed the first half-chi trainer in blessed land to have the prototype of Taoism. As the owner of Cloud Cave blessed land, Jiang Shangzhen, had some candid conversations with him. Jiang Shangzhen, also known as Zhou Fei from the Spring Tide Palace in Blessed Land, and later Chief Zhou of Luopao Mountain, once reviewed countless historical books and secret records in Ohua Blessed Land, and first came to an astonishing conclusion that had been sealed for a long time. He was proficient in the knowledge of 3 religions and 100 schools. The Mr. Shizhou, who was only limited by the inferior rank of the original Blessed Land, failed to ascend successfully. So Jiang Shangzhen joked that if Eugenie saw Anna Yuanpin, he would have to call master. Before Lu Xing's death, there was an unknown question, and the object of the question was the old Guanju. That's why Lao Guanju was invited out of the Blessed Land and came to Tonggishao with the Taoist Chunyang. There was a fairy-like city on the crane in the Daquan dynasty of Tonggishao. And Lu Xing was on the right side of the disciple Sui, who was taught by him, and she also achieved a feat that was unprecedented. She was alone, and when she reached the top of the martial arts, she actually learned half of the martial arts in the world. In later generations, Zhu Lian and Ding Ying, although the martial arts realm was obviously higher than that of Sui right side, they were not able to accomplish this. Although the incense is flickering and looming, it is always on the line. When Sui came to Haoran world on the right side and became a Qi trainer, he really knew the weight of those books left by his husband. Lu Xing smiled and said, "I want everything, but I can't chew too much. It really is useless." Am a scholar. Sui asked cautiously on the right, Mr. S. realm. Lu Xing said, in the final analysis, my own Taoism is not tough enough, which led to the stagnation in the Jade Pure realm for too long. I didn't know a certain truth until Jiang Shangjin reminded me last time. The authorities are obsessed with bystanders, but it is too late. However, Lu Xing has been away from the Blessed Land for so many years, but he has not been able to become an immortal. After the failure of the inquiries that no third person knew about the inside story, Lu Xing, who died once, was in a daze, and when he opened his eyes again, he saw a tall old Taoist priest sitting on both sides. In the endless galaxy, look down on the world together. The old Taoist who claimed to be the master of Bixiao Cave said that his aptitude for cultivating the Tao was actually quite good. Replace the body and continue to practice in a place full of spiritual energy. There is an agreement. The next time the two sides meet, if Lu Xing can break the cage with his own swordsmanship, he will be qualified to be worthy of him as a Taoist friend. That golden pill is a parting gift, it is your Lu Xing's possession, and there is no need for it anymore. Don't do it, pass it on to others. It's a pity that Lu Xing was in the blessed land of the Cloud Cave. Although he stepped into the Jade Pure realm step by step, he was still a sword cultivator, and he never broke the innate confinement of the Hechuang robe. The robe is like a hole in the sky, just like a sentence of white poetry, and the avenue is like a blue sky, I can't help it. This is a kind of test deliberately made by the old guard. If Lu Xing can break the restriction of a robe and stand up after breaking it, he will be able to leave the Taoist ancient well. Lu Xing is no longer a frog at the bottom of the well, so he is qualified to be recognized by the master of Bixiao Cave. A Taoist friend. It's a pity that Lu Xing was in a prison, wearing a robe, guarding an ancient golden pill, with a three-legged golden toad with strong fortune lying on his shoulders. In fact, it was Lu Xing that year, and he suggested that Jiang Shangjin take Lu Fang, his best friend on the mountain, to take a trip to the blessed land of lotus flowers. As a result, there was a spring-tide palace and a bird's-eye view peak Lu Fang on the blessed land, but Lu Fang still failed to explore the love, and never really achieved the death of his heart and life after death. On the Cloud Cave blessed land side, Jiang Shangjin had a conversation with An Yuanzhang. I want to borrow Mr. S. sword now, and it will be dark and dark. There is no such sword, it is definitely not a fool. You are the sword. At that time, Lu Xing didn't understand the true meaning, and only thought that Jiang Shangjin complained that he had delayed his good friend Lu Fang's practice, so he deliberately cursed people, but Lu Xing was so smart, he quickly chewed the aftertaste. Jiang Shangzhen's statement has a profound meaning, saying that the physique of his Yuan pin is exactly the abandoned sword that Lao Guanzhu personally forged and gave up halfway. Therefore, for the remaining half, Yuanjin needs to cast and refine it himself, and continue to refine the sword with his body. One day, when it is perfected, Lu Xing will naturally be able to break the cage of the robe. The cultivator of the 14th realm in the Qingming world, the female crown Wuzhou, is walking a path of all things can be refined. Lu Xing, a scholar in the blessed land of lotus blossoms, is equivalent to opening up two avenues of refining qi and refining things. But the good fortune tricks people, and they all give up halfway. Lu Xing glanced at the long sword on the right side of Sui, and smiled. The word longevity, reverse the order, is growth. The golden robe of Qin Pingan obtained from Jialonggu, and the Qixin sword lent to Sui right side, the greatest magic is that it can continuously improve the rank. And the greatest beauty of that golden pill is that it allows a Qi practitioner to create an extra golden pill of extremely high rank out of thin air. Obtaining this golden pill is seamless, and the cultivator is like opening up a real cave, with many more natal caves, and can also inherit the complete Tao line of a great cultivator of the Ascension realm. Under the 14th realm, who would not be envious of chi practitioners facing such a golden pill? Lu Xing was a little sad. I can't help myself, I'm no longer a pure warrior. In the end, Lu Xing said with a smile, the sunset is white, it's Chao Ci. The tide is coming, the world is green, Qinpin gone. A village school in Suian County, Yenzhou Prefecture. Because now there is an unexpected student Ning Ji, and the disciple Zhao Shuxia always builds a floor in the kitchen, it is not unreasonable. Chen Pingan is in the village next door, both surnamed Qin and the church name is Zunyutang, renting a house. There is an old house with a patio. There are 3 rooms, just one for each person. The second floor is used for stacking sundries, and there are several nests built by swallows last year under the eaves. Ning Ji has already thought about buying 2 piglets. Killing pigs during the Chinese New Year is more New Year's flavor. As for the residents in the village school, if Qin Pingan is too late to prepare lessons or read books at night, he will continue to live there. Song he stayed here for several days, and finally he was ready to set off and return to the capital of Dali.